27th, 2012 Board of Selectmen meeting. The agenda this evening starts as usual with citizens' input, followed by the Southeastern Regional School Budget. Then we have at 7:30 the 2012 NCAA Men's Lacrosse Championships at Gillette Stadium. I'm then going to rearrange a couple of things on the agenda. The next item, I'm going to make the billboard sewer contract, followed by the pay plan, which the town manager will present, the annual town warrant, the discussion of the fiscal year 2013 budget, and then we have an executive session scheduled for real property negotiations and labor negotiations, not to come back into open session. Selectman DeVellis is at a public hearing this evening and will be joining us later in the evening. In between all of this, we'll be doing action items. Can we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance? And I'll ask Linda to lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start citizens' input, I've been asked to read this from the Planning Department. Save the date. The Foxborough Planning Board and the Metro Area Planning Council will hold a listening session on March 29th, 2012 for the town's first ever housing production plan. The forum will include preliminary findings of the MAPC staff that are assisting the town and an opportunity for townspeople to voice their needs, concerns, and ideas for affordable, elderly, and disabled housing. The meeting is Thursday, March 29th, 2012 from 7 o'clock to 8:30 at the McGinty Room in the Public Safety Building, 8 Chestnut Street, and refreshments will be served. Okay, citizens' input. And if you go over to the microphone and give your name and address, please. We can have someone lower it for you.
Is that all right?
Oh, he's gonna fall out.
Hi, my name is Edith Erickson, and I live at 91 North Street, Foxborough. This is rather intimidating. I was coming up here after I received the mailing, and of course other issues have erupted that are going to be much more dramatic for the Board of Selectmen. But as a resident of the community for over 40 years, I wanted to share with you that I think this mailing that we all received from the craft group was totally self-serving on the part of the craft group. And I have given you each a copy of my handwritten prints. I work late and I didn't have time to type it. I just would like to make some comments on this quickly. They talk about the craft group in the town of Foxborough, and about the third paragraph down under the stadium picture, they comment about all the things that they helped. Well, I've lived here longer than the craft group has been here. We take care of ourselves, and these organizations and groups were funded well and functioning well before the craft group ever came to town. I would also like to add that what the craft group claims they've given was not particularly sought, but should have been given without strings attached, so that as a large business in town, of course their gifts are welcome, but now at a point where maybe the residents as a whole do not agree with what the craft group wants, we need to step back and say thank you for your gifts, but not have that held over us. The other thing is that this whole complaint, and I know things changed today with the lawsuit, and I'm not following that closely, is that the citizens' input was just for that, for citizens. And normally businesses get themselves on the agenda and have a meeting, a proper meeting in a proper time. Most of this, as I say, is a self-serving pamphlet, and I would also add that it's gotten to a point that there are other businesses in town besides the craft group, and there are a significant number of people who do not necessarily appreciate all of the changes that have come to the town because of so-called improvements. And I really, in the long run, would like to thank you for taking, and the town manager for taking a stand to put the businesses back where they belong, which is at a proper agenda place. Thank you.
Thank you, Edith. Appreciate your comments. Any other, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Any other comments? All right. Go ahead, sir.
agree with my neighbor that I picked the wrong day to come. I have a prepared statement, if you bear with me. My name is Mark Todd. I live on Ames Road. I know that my most recent letter have made points that are a bit complex and misconstrued as pro-casino. I want to say up front that I'm not getting anything from Wind or Craft, that my wife and I make our money outside of Foxborough. We bring it back here and we invest in this town, in our property, local businesses, and schools. I am pro-Foxborough. I care that our local government operate in the best interest of protecting the investments we have made. I want to discuss strategy, tactics, and the law, not advocate for a particular side in this debate. My personal vote is no on the casino, as I explained in my first letter, but that single vote won't help anyone. When I wrote the first letter to Mr. Kraft and Mr. Wind, I explained that I felt the casino project would rip the town apart and that we are ill-equipped to handle a proposal of that size and magnitude. This is a really nice community, and I would ask that they did not see overwhelming support to please move on. The Board of Selectmen, in my opinion, did the right thing and voted to say that Foxborough did not want to be a host community. Since then, something has changed. Kraft and Wind organization have engaged the town people directly. Why does this change things? Foxborough is not a city. It's a town structure where the town people retain the power. This is significant. It has been argued that if the Board of Selectmen vote against an agreement, that the deal will be stopped and never get to the town for a vote. So we do not need to negotiate or even prepare with experts. The Board of Selectmen cannot stop this deal from happening because the new state law requires the casino applicant to sign an agreement with the host community municipality. In my opinion, that's simply not true. I believe the Kraft Wind team already knows this. It is true the state law, House 3807, Sections 15, Clauses 8 and 13, require an agreement signed with the host community before taking the next step. But a majority town vote could require the selectmen to move the deal forward over personal objections of the selectmen. Written in our town bylaws, Article 2, Section 2, and Article 1, Section 1, the town vote supersedes the selectmen's authority. The town vote can happen on all town issues and can be called by 200 registered voters. This power is not limited to just zoning issues, as I've heard, but any bylaw and any action the town citizens wish to engage within the law. Even if the selectmen are 5-0 against a proposal, 200 voters can call a town vote and the town majority can force a deal to be negotiated. And this would be consistent and in line with the new state law, from my understanding, and I'm not an attorney. But this is why I believe things have changed. When the Kraft Wind team began negotiating directly with the town people, the real power of the town, for all intents and purposes, they began negotiating with Foxborough. Let me say that again. The negotiations have already started without the selectmen, but with their bosses. The Kraft Wind team is working to find out what resonates in the town, what we want, what we're afraid of, addressing the issues, and then polling to see the results. What they are doing is all legal, both under our bylaws and to the letter of the law of the new state law. The selectmen are not waiting for a proposal from Kraft Wind. You are waiting for the proposal that results from these direct negotiations with the town people. The proposal will come when they have at least 2/3 vote support, validated through polling in these direct negotiations. The proposal will come at a timing of their choosing to maximize the pressure on the town to act. That is why I believe the selectmen who are charged with protecting the town first above all else need to discuss and consider the situation and what is best for the town, not what is best for any one position. This situation is dynamic. It's not static. Adjustments need to be made. Given the position, timing, and events unfolding now, I believe the best defense for the town is to unify and agree to one of two outcomes. Either the answer is no, or if it's yes, it had better be the best deal ever negotiated between a community and a casino project. For families, property owners, business owners, and everyone in town, either one of those two outcomes represents the minimum exposure for the town and protects the town no matter how the vote goes. If the Kraft Wind team can convince the town or create a timing issue that influences the town before we can take action, we will not get anywhere close to that best deal. Property owners cannot take the risk of taking another hit to their property values. This is the main point of my second letter. I suggest that the Board of Selectmen establish an independent committee of experts, begin contract talks on how the negotiations will occur, and enter into negotiations with Craft and Win. The Board of Selectmen can get a contract outlining how the negotiation will happen, get the time we need to put our experts together, the money to pay for it, set expectations for the town people, limit any liability to the town for future lawsuits, etc. Negotiating is not supporting the casino. It's a legal mechanism for us to protect our interests. The yes-no vote will come separately. Negotiations have already started, but they're happening directly with the people. The people are hanging out there with no government air cover. They have no expertise, no advisors, no signed contract to outline the rule of engagement in the negotiations. It's just Craft and Win testing which trinkets and how many it will take to get this deal done. And they've only just started. Are we going to leave it to every private citizen to negotiate the stuff that is best for them? Is that the direction the Board of Selectmen has set? If so, please let me know so we can get in line. Clearly, we need to be negotiating as a unified town. This is the single largest event that the town has ever seen. Much bigger than a sign here or there. Something this big, the town voters will get a clear chance to vote on. If the town votes yes, it will affect the town for many generations. If we vote yes, and it's a bad to mediocre deal because we didn't get the proper structure to protect the town until it was too late, then shame on us and watch the property values then. Our town government has to get this under control, protect our interests. Not the next town government, not wait and see what the voters' temperature is. Protect our interests now. The risks are too great. We need to recognize who we are, what our skill set is, and what the risks are. We need to come together as a community. We are running out of time and excuses. Why not to get experts on our side and set up a special committee to protect the town? The town needs it. The selectmen need it. The Craft Win team needs it. Everybody has rights. We need to work through this business correctly with the vote and proper protection with the proper knowledge. If you were arrested for murder, what's the first thing you'd do? You'd go find the best lawyer you can find. You wouldn't sit in your cell and say, I'm innocent, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. You'd find that best lawyer. Waiting for after May, then June before getting our experts set up, maybe pushing it too late. Timing is difficult to estimate, but doing nothing while the situation develops is very risky. The Gaming Commission has finished its appointments of 5 commissioners just the other day. Towns like Milford already in negotiations with casino applicants. By the fall, the pressure will intensify, and we've seen this movie before during the stadium deal when the Patriots all of a sudden were moving to Hartford. We cannot afford to lose leverage. We cannot afford to negotiate this by ourselves with local attorneys, and this will not go away without a town vote. If the no vote has the numbers, I suggest you call a town vote and vote either on the zoning or vote that we won't be a host community for a number of years and put an end to it. If you do not have the numbers, we cannot sit out here. We need to protect the town and all involved with the proper business approach. Some say the perception is reality, and we should not negotiate because then the perception is the casino will happen. I say that the reality should shape the perception. If the reality is this will ultimately go to the town for a vote, then we need a structure, experts, and legal mechanisms to deal with this ASAP. Doing nothing or hoping that we can protect the town with selectmen votes who have limited authority is not realistic, and it bets the whole town to chance. Our goal should be simple. The answer is no. But if it's yes, this deal will have to be the best deal ever cut between a community and a casino. And we will know the difference because our experts will know what the top deals have been and educate us. Lastly, I hope you all understand my goal and motivation is really truly to protect the value of our town with realistic assessment of our situation. I hope both sides can see that. I do not envy you selectmen. I know you all to be advocates for the town. I know this is tough. I know it's moving fast, complex, and everyone's beating you up. I know you all have constituencies to attend to and positions you have publicly taken with them as well. This is one of those times where you have to reevaluate the situation and lead. We cannot continually react to events and let them drive us. I hope you can find the strength to do what is best for the town and minimize our risk exposure no matter which way the town votes. And if you need more help or discussion, There are outstanding and talented people on both sides of this issue that I know would come together to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I see we have town council here now, and since the Patriots, everybody knows, Paul, I'm not going to recognize you right now. I'm doing the Patriots next. At our last Board of Selectmen meeting on March 13th, representatives of FXP LLC, an affiliate of the Kraft Group, began to make a statement during citizens' input relating to the town's contract for advertising services. Since we had a public hearing scheduled just after they began speaking and a topic item on the agenda later in the evening, I asked them to come back in the meeting before the agenda topic on water and sewer. As they started to speak at that time, the town manager, who is also our chief procurement officer, strongly objected to my allowing them to speak, stating we are right in the middle of and about to embark again on a bidding process. He said, I have to protest this discussion in the strongest possible terms as absolutely injurious to the town's interest. This discussion and this subject matter, if this discussion continues publicly, is absolutely harmful to the town's interest. If it goes forward, Mr. Chairman, I don't take any responsibility for what happens, but I am telling you implications could be extremely serious. The town manager further stated, veiling this discussion under citizens' input is ridiculous. This is not citizens' input. It's an attempt to use the selectmen's meeting to subvert a public bidding process because one of the bidders disagrees with the town's legal position, end quote. As a result of the town manager's strong protest, I asked the Kraft organization representatives to cease speaking until I had a chance to seek town council's opinion. By a letter to the Board of Selectmen dated March 21st, FXP requested to make a statement at tonight's meeting regarding the bid process and the proposed warrant article related to it. FXP also stated it would no longer be a bidder in the process. Yesterday afternoon, a lawyer for FXP contacted the town's lawyers and stated that FXP would be filing a lawsuit in federal court against the town seeking a court order to permit FXP to make a statement at tonight's meeting. Based on the letter of the 21st, the town agreed that FXP representatives could make such a statement. This morning, FXP's attorneys were informed of this decision, and as the lawyers from the town and FXP were resolving the details, a judge entered an order that FXP permitted to make its statement on the topics later described in this letter. The town cannot further comment on this matter because of the litigation that is now pending. I believe the representatives of FXP are here to make their public statement, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ted Fire with the Kraft Group, One Patriot Place. With me tonight is Jim Cobry, also with the Kraft Group. First, I need to say that what transpired at the meeting here 2 weeks ago was very sad and disappointing to us. For 25 years, we've worked very hard to be good and productive neighbors and citizens, and it has been a mutually beneficial relationship. We've invested close to $1 billion of capital. We've become the town's largest taxpayer. We've employed thousands of people, and we've provided significant financial and other resources to the community through our charitable efforts. It is truly shameful that Mr. Pecos and at least one board member who was complicit with him took the extraordinary steps that they did to deny us our constitutional right to speak publicly, to the point where we had to file a lawsuit to come and be heard. As you may recall, when we were here 2 weeks ago, we were asked to hold our comments until later in the agenda, as the chairman mentioned, and then during a break, a particular board member conferred with Mr. Pecos. What happened when we came back to the table to speak, and you can watch the video, shows that they collaborated to prevent us from speaking. We happen to have the resources to defend ourselves against this intimidation and bullying tactics that were on display here at the last meeting. What about those citizens who may not have those resources? People like Deb Stewart and A.J. Dooley, who were also bullied at the last meeting. We've seen Mr. Pecos shout everyone down, the board included, using the threat of supposed legal advice and other information he had in his control, and look where it's brought us. How much has the town already spent on legal fees? Where was legal advice really being given and to whom? What interpretations from the Inspector General's office were really issued? The town manager and members of this board should never again feel empowered to treat citizens this way. Some people are going to say this is all politically motivated. But you all know this has been going on for well over 2 years on the billboards. This has nothing to do with politics, and everything to do with our right to speak in public and with a threatened eminent domain taking of our land. Now that we finally can speak, we want to express to you the importance to us of decisions that are in front of the board right now, namely the effort to place on the town warrant an article to take our land by eminent domain and the fatally flawed bid process for the billboard advertising. The key points you need to consider, especially tonight as you debate the eminent domain article. We've been trying to tell the town politely that the bid process is flawed. The town does not own the land on which the billboards sit. You're out there encouraging third parties to bid, which exposes the town and the winning bidder to liability. We did not bid and we will not bid, because if we win the bid, we're exposed to that liability. Yet on the way over here tonight, I'm told that Mr. Pecos is on Channel 7 telling the reporter we couldn't speak at the last meeting because we were a bidder during an active bid. We could not have made it more clear in our March 5th letter to Mr. Pecos, and again sitting here 2 weeks ago right at this table, that we were not and are not a bidder. So now, instead of calmly and professionally trying to resolve the flaw in the bid process, and in all likelihood generating a financial outcome that is far superior to the track that you're currently on, we're being threatened with an eminent domain taking of our land. Something really wrong with this picture. It's not how we've done business together over so many years. I'll close, and here's what we want people to understand. We have a right to be heard. The town should take steps to avoid any future violations of our or any citizen's constitutional right to speak. The board is about to take action on a warrant article, an eminent domain taking of our land. This approach is an ill-conceived solution to a fatally flawed process. We're here to ask that you really consider what's in the town's best interests. Do the right thing on the warrant article and on the bid effort. We want to get back to a productive, cooperative relationship with the town, and we are hopeful that we can. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. All right, Paul, you wanted to be recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Mortensen, 9 Alger Road. I just simply wanted to comment, I don't know if he's still here, Mark, or not. I think I
don't know if he's
heard him say, and I'll just talk about it for a second, is that on the casino deal, that notwithstanding the Board of Selectmen, if they were to vote 5-0 against any deal, that the town voters, 200 of them, could bypass the Selectmen on that point. So if I understood that correctly, I'm just not certain that that's correct. I would guess in reading the statute that the casino statute, would control over any town bylaw on that point. So, my apologies if I misunderstood his point, but I would think it's the Selectmen who control it at this point. So anyway, thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Are there any other people who would like to speak under citizens' input?
Mr. Chairman, can we get copies of that statement that was read?
Which one?
Mr.
Patriots?
Fine? Yes.
Do you folks have a copy of that statement that you'd be willing to provide us?
Can we get back to you on that?
Yes, sir. I guess what goes around comes around. Thank you.
Hector
Mr.
Bayona,
Ballin?
153 North Street. I followed up on the sign issue for the last 3 or 4 years, trying to understand what was going on. I am not an expert on all the legalities of what happened, but what caught my attention was that I received a letter that you were going to read during the last meeting. And out of the points that you had a nice concentration of verbiage complaining about the Select Women Brew. On your mailer, you did the same thing. Tonight, you mentioned that this is not politically motivated. My concern is that how do we make sure that our elected officials do the best thing for the town without the fear of this kind of reprisals? That every vote that happens in town takes minimum of 3 people. That decision was made between the water and sewer group and the selectmen. At least 5 more people had to vote. If one select person or one participant in our group decides to pursue an avenue that can create more revenue for the town, why should that person be vilified? How do we feel comfortable now that we have the strongest neighbor the biggest contributor, someone that comes back and selects one person out of 6 or 7, and is the one that is being vilified, and happens a month and a half before an election. Are we looking to get rid of one of the 3 votes that were against the casino? Or we are trying to get away with 1 vote that can hurt us with the signs? Is the money that important that we're willing to threaten our officials with a punishment of losing an election because they think that they can do something good for the town? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands. Do we have Southeastern Regional representation? We have a public hearing scheduled at 7:30. Would you mind if I did that on time and then came right back to you? I apologize. No, that's fine. We hate to try to cut citizens' input off. So we have a public hearing scheduled at 7:30, 2012 NCAA Men's Lacrosse Championships at Gillette Stadium. I'll ask Mr. Sullivan to read the notification.
Board of Selectmen acts as local licensing authority pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 181, and Sections 183A, and Chapter 136, Section 4. Town of Foxborough Revised General Bylaws, Article 5, Section 6, and also stadium rules and regulations. Will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, March 27, 2012, beginning at 7:30 p.m. in the Andrew A. Gaylor Jr. Meeting Room, 40 South Street, to review the application submitted by MPS LLC for the 2012 NCAA Men's Lacrosse Championship. All events are proposed for Gillette Stadium. All applicants for these events are on file at the Office of Selectmen.
I'm just going to ask for a 2-minute recess so the camera folks can leave and we can not be distracted during that section. So Dan, if you and your team want to come up on this and get ready, we'll try to keep this thing moving. We have most of the camera crew
They're
gone.
gonna just go out and interview people probably,
Okay.
and then come back
All right,
in anyway.
all right. So Dan, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, this is our application for the 2012 Men's Lacrosse Championship. We hosted this event back
Let the record show that you're wearing an NCAA Men's Lacrosse Championship jacket.
We hosted this event in 2008, 2009. It's a 3-day event over Memorial Day weekend. We competed with about 8 venues to get this event back to Gillette. The Saturday, May 26th, is the biggest of the 3 days. It's the Division I and II semifinals, about 45,000 people. Anticipated it's 2 games, Division 2:30 and 5 p.m. On Sunday, it's the Division II and III championship game with about 20 to 25,000 people. And then on Monday, it's the Division I championship at 1 p.m. and again about 20 to 23,000 people. We're selling series tickets now. We're a little ahead of where we were in 2009, a little behind in 2008, so I think our estimated numbers are pretty accurate. We'll know that we won't know the teams till about 7 or 10 days prior to the event, and then that's when those schools, the sales pick up. We don't anticipate opening the 300 level. We can reach that capacity in the 100 and 200 level in our clubs. Our West Club will be the Fan Fest area, as it was in last year, with hospitality, interactive games, sampling, etc. We will allow fans to scan out into the festival area and scan back in, as we did in 2008. In 2009, Route 1 traffic parking is there's no parking fee for this event, no toll collection at this event. We do get a lot of new people coming first time to Gillette, so we communicate with them with emails and e-newsletters, and we also flyer specifically on Monday with people going home. On Monday we have heavy traffic to the south, so our traffic plan, working with the chief and lieutenant, will be have a lot of traffic if they're going south and they're on the P6, the P10 to go left onto Route 1. Otherwise they'll go north on Route 1 and get on 95 and then circle around to go south. Very much a family event. No alcohol service, being an NCAA championship game.
Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Lorraine, I'll start with you.
Thanks.
Linda?
I was just wondering if George was gonna come up at all, or,
Come on up, George. Go ahead.
I was just a little concerned about Memorial Day. It's that Monday, right? On the 25th?
Monday, yes.
So,
28th.
what did I think it was the 25th? You know what? You can just forget about
Okay.
my question. I don't know why I thought Memorial Day was, I'm a week ahead.
All right, we'll hit replay.
Yeah, I'm good, I'm good.
Anything else?
No, that was the only thing I was concerned about.
Mark?
No questions.
George, you want to add your thoughts?
Well, Stadium Advisory met and went and reviewed it. There are a couple of things. They are anticipating some campers. They're going to be staying overnight. So chiefs feel comfortable with that, 10 to 15. And on Memorial Day, it is going to be highlighted with numerous ceremonies, including a flyover. So it'll be a fairly, from what we're told, fairly significant event, you know, in terms of.
On Memorial Day?
Correct.
So is there an event on Memorial Day? Am I
Yes,
missing
it's
something?
Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Monday is the Division I championship.
So Monday is Memorial Day?
Right.
Monday,
28th.
right.
The
I
date
had
is
the date.
wrong in here.
I apologize.
So, okay, the 25th. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
had
what
the
the problem
date
is
wrong.
you have the 25th. Okay, so
28th.
Right.
it is Memorial Day. So just, can I go back
Go
to
ahead.
me again?
You're back on.
Sorry.
No?
So I'm just concerned about our, thing in the town here, and, do you think that there'll be a lot of cars coming in early, because we have our ceremony in the common, Dan?
Yes.
So I'm just fearful that, usually we block off all the streets
Okay.
to have that little parade, and
Yes. We will tell fans with the e-newsletters and emails to come Route 1 and 95. I don't recall having any problem in 2008 and 2009.
What time's the event on Memorial
1
Day?
p.m.
And our thing is at 9?
yeah,
9 to 11.
night, yeah.
No, I don't anticipate them getting here.
Chief, did you?
Mr. Chairman, if I.
Yes, but I was going to ask you folks to comment, but you can comment. Come on up.
The last, the 2 years that we had the event, it did not interfere with the town's recognition of Memorial Day. I was able to split the staff to monitor both the contingent of officers on the stadium grounds, as well as the traffic control for our parade on that day. And it appeared that most of the traffic was localized to the Route 1 area.
I experienced it in 2009, exactly as Chief O'Leary said, that's how it worked.
So neither of you are concerned about it, the event at all, any one of the 3 days? Okay. Linda, anything else?
No, that's it, thanks.
Hey, George, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, but other than that, we voted to recommend for your approval based on the contingency, the implementation of the chief's approved public safety plan staffing levels.
Okay. Any comments from anybody in the audience? Seeing none,
Motion
I'll
to
entertain a
close.
motion to close.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second,
There's a motion to close the public hearing and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries 4-0. Now entertain a motion to
I
approve the request.
move that we approve the 2012 NCAA Men's Lacrosse Champions at Gillette Stadium on the 26th, 27th, and 28th of May.
Second.
There's a motion, there's a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 4-0. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go right into the Southeastern Regional School Budget. If you'd like to come up forward, please. Welcome.
Thanks. A little disappointed. I thought the cameras were here for our budget.
That's right. Well, with the great work you do at that school, I'm sure they should have been covering you.
Through.
Does everyone have a copy of the budget? Or?
Do you have an extra?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, after they make sure they get theirs.
Does everyone have one?
No.
No, I don't think we.
We didn't have any,
Yep,
no.
there was nothing in our package.
We didn't have, thank you.
Thank you.
Pauline, you need one for the record, please.
Thank you.
I'll give you this one before I leave. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us again this year. Seeing that you have a full agenda tonight, I won't take much time. Why don't we, if you don't mind, I'll just jump to some of the highlights. If you have
Absolutely.
any questions, feel free. If you want to jump to page 5, probably the most important page on how the assessment was calculated.
You reviewed this with the school committee as well, correct?
Correct. This has been approved by the school committee last Tuesday, so the budget's been approved. And I was here with the FinCom 2 weeks ago. Oh, AdCom, I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, so we're going over that. So quickly, if you look in the first box, about halfway down, Foxborough, enrollment ratio is 1.8%, with a minimum contribution of $275,592, net transportation cost of $9,480, a net capital cost of $3,494, giving you an FY13 assessment of $288,566. And compared to last year, that's a decrease of $31,364. So that's the assessment.
The enrollment is down from the prior year,
The
correct?
enrollment is also down the prior year, 5 students from 29 to 24 in Foxborough. And if you go to page 10, I believe it is, that shows Foxborough High School, Southeastern, and Norfolk County. Looks like in total, Foxborough is down 68 students from 2,895 to 2,827, with a loss of 67 at the Foxborough High School, 5 at Southeastern, and a +4 at Norfolk County. And in turn, Foxborough losing 67 students, their assessments increased $851,912. Southeastern, with a loss of 5 students, has decreased $37,421. And Norfolk County, with an increase of 4 students, has increased $53,960. So for a total increase of $868,451 to the town of Foxborough. Overall, the school.
All the schools.
Correct. So it looks like, in total, Foxborough's lost students overall.
Right. We've continued to do that for a couple of years.
What would be the cause of that typically? Is it people leaving the town? Is it people, do you have a way of?
I don't have that answer.
In terms of their enrollment going down or in terms of the overall?
The whole, yeah, I don't have the answer.
There's analysis done every year that the school committee gets on the enrollment and kind of where it is and where it's going. It's gradually dropped over the last, Randy, you say 5, 6 years? Just very gradual?
At least the last 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I just maybe thought somebody might have asked the question, someone would be able to answer it.
It gets discussed at the school committee, the same as I believe as we said, the enrollment at the charter school has dropped. And one of the reasons why that dropped is the strategy by Foxborough to implement the full-day kindergarten. Because when we didn't have it, they had it at the charter school, and then once your child was in there, then they might as well stay there through. And when we implemented that in Foxborough, we were able to win some of those back. So we've won back some students from there, but we've overall had a decline in the number of students in the system.
And do you think any of the decline might be because you just had the whole renovation at all, or?
If anything, I don't think it'd be due to the renovation, no. Maybe just the population or also demographics.
Just if it helps the board, we got some numbers from the planning department based on the last decennial census that just took place. And in general, school-age population is declining, both in the Northeast and in Foxborough in particular, and our population is aging. Now, I don't know if that translates directly into a shift in population, but the general trend is the school-age population is declining. That was one of the conclusions.
Yeah. I'm sure that plays a factor.
Yeah.
Okay. Linda, questions? Lorraine?
I just wanted to ask Superintendent, how did you accomplish the $31,000 reduction to us? Because typically it goes in the other direction.
Again, due to the loss of students.
That's strictly it?
That's going to be the majority. Yeah,
okay.
Correct, yeah. And actually, the decrease would have been more if the state would fund regional transportation at 100%, which they don't.
Gotcha.
Okay. As you can see, your cost of the regional transportation was $9,480.
Okay.
So technically, if the state would fund that 100%, you'd have less than $9,480.
Right. Okay, thank
As
you.
a follow-up to that question, in the prior couple of years, you folks have kind of led the school communities in terms of low increases in overall costs.
We've stayed at net school spending, correct.
Right, and so if you look at your overall budget, not the Foxborough piece, but your overall budget from 12 to 13 increased by 2%?
From 12 to 1.7%, and that's on page 4.
1.7,
Yeah.
okay. And I just call, on page 4, I call to the attention of the public, you folks have traditionally, as you've come before us or the school committee, really done an excellent job squeezing the nickel as tight as you can to provide a quality education for the students, but at the same time minimizing the overall cost of the program. And, you know, when you look at those kinds of increases over the last couple of years, you've really done a nice job, and you deserve a lot of credit. I think the finance director's raised his hand and wants to say
Ask
something.
him about the impact on the assessments due to the major renovation they're doing to the building.
So you heard his question. Why don't you answer the question? Just restate it for those at home if you
No
would.
impact to the town at all.
We call that a softball.
In other words, you've had a major
the cameras?
renovation.
Yeah, exactly.
A major renovation in your building.
$32 million renovation expansion project going throughout the school. We actually broke ground November 30th
Yeah.
with no additional cost to the towns or the city that we serve.
Right. And that's just really phenomenal. You deserve a lot of credit for
Thank
that
you.
and your leadership.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just a note to the board. I'm really pleased to hear the chair note for the superintendent, for the folks that are here, the excellent work that the school does. I think part of the key is that they have the capability and really do a lot of the work themselves that other school systems have to farm out. They do their own carpentry with their in-house program. They do their own bus repair with their in-house program. And the list just goes on. And when you get an opportunity to tour the school, it is absolutely astounding how immaculate and well kept up the facility is. They do tremendous work, as you say, with squeezing every penny out of that budget and keeping the assessments to the member communities at a very reasonable level and provide kids with an outstanding education. So, you know, I'm a great fan, as you are, Mr. Chairman, of what the Regional Vocational School does. Really excellent programming over there. And the kids, I've had the opportunity to be associated with some of the graduates over the years, and they outstanding young men and women that come up with some real good skills, that's for sure.
I think if you ever have a chance in the area, stop by. We'd love to give you a tour, show you what's going on with the renovation, and maybe even grab some lunch in our colonial room.
And we are working, the school committee chair is taking the lead, finding a candidate that they can bring forward to the joint boards to fill the vacancy that you have. Again, we acknowledged with great sadness Dan having to step down from your board with his illness, and he's did a great job for us. We're very proud of the work he did. And we're very proud of your teachers as well. As Kevin mentioned, they do a really fabulous job. So we'd like you to take a message back to your school community that the town of Foxborough is very proud of the work you do and that our students get great value from attending your program, and we thank them all.
Thanks. And Dan's going to be a big loss to the school committee.
If I was to take you up on your offer, how would I get in touch? Do you have a card or anything?
Sure, I can get you one. I can leave one at the desk for you, or
Appreciate it.
just call the school and you can ask for myself. My name is Mark Morris, school business manager. Be more than happy to set up an appointment with you.
Right.
More than happy.
All right, excellent.
Great.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate you
Appreciate it.
coming. I
Have a great
appreciate your
night.
patience
Thank you.
tonight.
No problem.
Okay. Okay, so that takes care of that. So what I was going to do is, that was going to take us up to 8 o'clock, so we're running a little bit ahead of schedule now with those two. So what I was going to do is take and start the town manager has under here, discussion billboard sewer contract. And I know there are still a lot of folks in the audience that have some questions potentially about that. And I know that some board members had indicated they had questions. So let me just turn it to the town manager to begin, and then we'll go from there.
I don't have anything.
Okay. We'll start with, I think it's important, and I know that town council is here. It's important, particularly with the news that broke today. Lots of people have lots of questions. And so I think it's helpful to share with people a little bit of history. And I see Philip in the back. Philip served 12 years on the Water and Sewer Commission. And Philip was here last week, and he talked to the community about the fact that they've had a long-standing arrangement with the Kraft Group starting in 1999, and in 1999 they agreed to donate land so we could build a sewer plant, and over the time they continued to amend and amend and amend that relationship. And in 2007, and Philip, correct me if I state anything wrong, you indicated that you wanted to take advantage of the Patriot Place situation, and so you entered into negotiations with the Patriots. The result of those negotiations were a contract. And, you know, like most things in life, nothing is very simple. And so Philip has shared with us over the last couple of years as we've worked together between a Board of Selectmen and a Water and Sewer, that, that his committee negotiated independently of any mitigation, and they came up with an agreement whereby the Patriots would agree to provide the land, build the sewer treatment plant at no cost to the town, that they would build 2 billboards, the town would share half the revenue, which we would use in the water department to mitigate water costs, and the Patriots would use their half to fund the capital necessary to build the plant. Where it gets confusing, I think, for some people is that at town meeting there was a PowerPoint that was put together, and it talked in general terms about all the things that Patriot Place was going to bring to the community and all the things that the town was going to provide as a result of Patriot Place. And so there were some people who felt that the mitigation, which included liquor license and other kinds of things, also included this separate contract with water and sewer. The difficult part, folks, is the contract, which is the legal document, does not make reference to that. And the document is fairly clear that, you know, we're going to do this and you're going to do that, and here's what the agreement is. But as we talked about this over a couple of years, there's a lot of gray and a lot of what people thought was intended and wasn't intended. And the Board of Selectmen and the Water and Sewer folks made a significant effort, starting actually almost 3 years ago. Right after Lorraine and I got on the board created goals and objectives. In that first year, part of the goals and objectives were to work in partnership with Water and Sewer to address the long-standing sewer issues. And that started with this negotiation with the Patriots because it was clear at that time that we were not going to go in the direction of using that sewer treatment plant. We were going to probably go to Mansfield, who was going to expand the plant. So then, folks, you know, frankly, the minutes reflect this, but we sat there and we said, so we have a contract, and the contract says, I'll build you a plant. It doesn't say I'll give you cash instead. And while some people criticized the contract, even at the time that it was signed, for not having a cash option, the bottom line is the contract was created out of nothing, and the Water and Sewer folks did a marvelous job of creating an opportunity of getting a sewer treatment plant at no cost for the town and generating some revenue out of nothing, i.e. the billboards. And over that time frame, the town, in fact, received some $500,000 or so in billboard revenue, and the Patriots received a similar amount of money. We worked very hard to try to negotiate with the Patriots so that in lieu of the sewer treatment plant, they would give us cash. And again, like most things, things aren't as clear and simple. And so we heard repeatedly from town council, and again, it's in the minutes, that town council had indicated that although the contract was drafted by a former town council and executed by a former town manager, that not every I and every I was dotted and every T was crossed. But we have in the minutes reflected that the town council said that despite that, there was no need of blowing up the whole agreement, but that in fact, we could take out the paragraph that said we'll build you a plant, and we'll put in a paragraph that said we'll give you $10 million instead over the same period of time. Unfortunately, there were lots of discussions back and forth about whether the flaws that were done originally tainted the entire process and the entire process had to rebid, or whether town council was correct in fact that you could take out the paragraph on building your plant and replace it with cash. There was a good faith effort on everybody's part for a couple of years. We thought we had a deal, the minutes reflect that, and then the deal fell apart. We thought we had a deal where the Patriots would pay us the equivalent of roughly $10 million over 30 years, plus we'd continue to share the billboards 50-50. So it has been a long-standing process. There's been a lot of dialogue, a lot of effort on everybody's part, and that culminated with, when we couldn't reach an agreement, the decision by the two boards that the only alternative was to put the billboards out to bid. And that process happened. There were lots of comments around that process in the newspaper, et cetera. Maybe those comments tainted the process, maybe they didn't taint the process, but the bottom line is nobody bid. And at our meeting last week, you heard a lot of discussion around the decision not to let the Patriots respond or comment on that. And you heard them, they filed a federal lawsuit, and they made their statement tonight. So that gives the community a little bit of history The Board of Selectmen and the Water and Sewer Commission have spent the better part of almost 3 years reviewing the contract, working through the contract, trying to renegotiate the contract, and doing everything we could to do something that we thought was in the best interest of the community, along with following all the laws of the Commonwealth. And we have not been successful in doing that. And I think the town manager has indicated that it is now out to bid again. And we're hoping that there'll be bids received and we'll be able to work through that process. Any comments or questions or anything, Lorraine?
Just a couple comments. Just to clarify, in the agreement, the memorandum of understanding, there actually is a specific mention of the liquor licenses that ties it to that agreement. It's in Section 8B. So I just wanted to point out that there is a tie to the exchange, there is a tie to that mitigation to the granting of those 12 liquor licenses by the voters. I think that's something that we've been discussing for a long time, that they were not connected, but in fact, right in the agreement, it does connect them. So that was just one fine point I wanted to put out there. I agree that in good faith, these negotiations went forward. It is unfortunate that the agreement that was reached at one point did not go through, was pulled back. We thought we were in a good place, and it didn't work out. I think that the important issue to consider here is the 30B requirement that we are required to work under, so that people understand that the members of both boards who decided to go out for bid, who voted to go out for bid, we were doing this to bring the town in compliance with 30B, and certainly that's something that town council should be speaking to more than I, but I just want to make sure that that's clear, that that wasn't we didn't have an option to not go out to bid. That's really all I want to say for now. Thank you.
The only thing I would disagree with, Lorraine, is we do have in the minutes from town council early on in the dialogue that, and he's here to speak for himself, but that as the minutes reflect, that once the contract was executed, the flaws were moot, and that he was recommending we work to take the paragraph out on the plant and put a paragraph in. I certainly acknowledge that there was a heated discussion throughout the time frame and different people interpreting different cases, different members of the Board of Selectmen reading the legal cases and having a different opinion than town council. But I agree with you that we all worked very hard. We thought we had a situation and it fell apart, and unfortunately we are where we are today. But I thought it was important because a lot of people have been asking a lot of questions, particularly about the lawsuit today. And while we can't get into the details of the lawsuit, it is important to note how much time and effort both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Water and Sewer Commission has put into this, not just over the last 3 years on this, but Philip will certainly share the amount of time that the Water and Sewer have put in historically with the craft organization of Route 1 and the low pressure district and all that other kinds of things. Lorraine, Linda, do you want to make any comments?
Just, I would ask Paul Francis to just make this very clear for the public, because there's so much chatter out there right now, and people are asking me, why would you go out for an RFP on something that you had such a great deal with, etc. And I can explain it to them the way that you can, Paul. So if you wouldn't mind just educating. I know that Larry just gave his speech about it, but I would like you, as our council, to inform the folks that we had no choice to go out to RFP.
And Paul, would you come to a microphone so the
Whatever
folks
you
at
need
home
to do,
can
yeah.
hear?
You
Either
can
here
sit.
or there.
He's got his pot.
Sit with us if you want.
The both of you can come and sit here if you like.
Yep.
It may be better where you can see me.
Sure.
We can see you there, Paul.
Yeah,
There's
have
cameras behind
see
us.
he's following you everywhere you go right now.
Trust me.
This is Attorney Rod Hoffman. He's a procurement expert.
Paul, just to be clear, so that Linda's question gets directly answered, so I understand and she understands, and I'm asking for clarification on her question. What conversations took place that made us go to a bid process? Is that your what you want to have information on, Linda?
Yeah, I just want it clear to everyone, the public, of, almost like the history of how this came to be, because the questions that are coming to me, I can't answer them, and know that I'm answering them correctly, so. As far as, many are saying, why would you go out for an RFP, when we had a contract with, well, we didn't, the water and sewer folks did, actually, but.
To try and make it simple, there were three principles at work here. The first is that we reached a conclusion that this contract, which was done before my time,
Yes.
had to go out to bid. It did not go out to bid. So the question arose, what is the remedy for it not going out to bid? We determined, through consultation with the Inspector General, that we could let the contract go its term. Any renewal or extension would have to go out to bid. So we are at the end of that contract in May of 2012. Now, we cannot extend it without doing the bidding. That's where we are.
By law.
By law.
By law. I just want to make that.
State law.
Clarification, state law.
Right.
Is there an ordinance or something that you can refer to that?
Chapter 30B of the general laws. And in this connection, I want to emphasize that we did consult with the Inspector General's office at several points along the way. We were particularly concerned because there was some issue about whether we had to immediately tear this thing up and go out to bid 2-3 years ago. And the conclusion of that, with the consultation with the Inspector General, was we could let this thing play out. It had already been partially performed. The parties had been working on it for some years, and the end was in sight. So with the advice of the state, we knew it had to go out to bid. Whether or not we had a deal with the Patriots, whether or not the deal that was negotiated was going to stay or be pulled back, it had to go out to bid. We also found that it needed a town meeting vote. And so separately, we had gone to the board and say, look, there's a problem here. It needed a town meeting vote. We prepared a warrant article. You all supported that warrant article. It went to town meeting. I believe the town voted to authorize you to enter into a long-term contract for these billboards so that you now have the authority between a town meeting vote and a procurement that's being done by the chief procurement officer to actually implement a valid, lawful contract going forward.
You all set, Lynn?
Does that help? Do you want to say something, Mr. Mark?
Did you have any discussion with the Attorney General on this at all? Or just the?
Or the Inspector General?
Was there any discussion with the Attorney General, any advice?
Not with the Attorney General, no. It's a procurement matter.
Mm-hmm. So
And that's the Inspector General's bailiwick.
Okay.
Anything else, Mark?
That's it, thank you.
Lorraine, anything else?
No, that was how I understood it.
Right. Linda, anything else?
I don't have anything right now.
Okay.
Well, can I just add that in going out to bid, there was no disrespect intended towards anybody.
Right.
This was not a criticism of the past. It wasn't a criticism of the Patriots. It wasn't a criticism of how the arrangement was working. It's all driven by the law.
Right.
We just wanted to do what the law said we had to do.
Right.
And did you reach out to council at any point for the craft organization? Because I thought at one point they were comfortable with us going out with an RFP anyway because they understood that. Is that correct?
I thought they were comfortable with doing an RFP.
Yeah, so.
I had discussions with Mr. Cobrey and.
That's what,
and
okay, yeah,
at the
thanks.
just as we were about to finalize the RFP, raised his concerns
And
about.
it was mutual. It was accepted on both sides that we were going out for the RFP.
It was understood, certainly,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
And again, as Linda indicated, this is a contract with Water and Sewer, not with the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
Water and Sewer had reached out, or vice versa, to work together, and so we worked collaboratively over this. And we worked literally over 3 years. So early on, we tried to work some things that would make it work for everybody. The difficult part, and I know we can't get into this, but, you know, when citizens hear that, you know, so they hear about a contract, and then the contract is not right, and then it wasn't done, and did the lawyer write it right? Did the town manager execute it right? And then you put the billboards, but you put them on the wrong spot, and you put them on the wrong land, and, you know, the folks watch this at home, and they wonder, you know, who the heck is in charge of all this stuff? And it's not as simple as it sounds. You know, when you decide to cite a billboard, sometimes where you cite it will add value or take value away depending on the exposure, and there was lots of discussion back and forth between the town and them, and so all of this will work itself out, and hopefully we'll get the relationship back on track, and we'll work through this kind of stuff. But we thought it was important, since the Board of Selectmen were getting lots of phone calls today and lots of emails. I don't know if the Water and Sewer Commissioners were getting as many as we were, but I don't know if your superintendent was on 4, 5, 7, and 25, but our town manager was on lots of TV tonight. And so we were getting lots of exposure, and we just thought it was important to make sure people know that there was a lot of effort, there was a lot of legal advice, there was a lot of counsel going in, and we were all trying to do the very best we could under a difficult situation. So.
Just one more thing. I just met with the Patriots lawyer and suggested that since they believe one set of facts apply and we believe another set of facts apply, that we would like an opportunity to exchange information and see if we can't get to common ground. For example, they have alleged that the billboards aren't on the easement land, that they are close to but not on it. On the other hand, the Water Sewer Commission had a survey done, and that survey came back and said it is on the easement. Well, they seem to think it's off. We seem to think it's on. I suggested perhaps we sit down, they give us what they have, we give them what we have, and we figure out where are the billboards and why is there a disagreement over what should be not in dispute. Where the billboards are is easily verifiable. Right. Let's try and narrow some of these issues and get on the same page.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Paul, because some of the feedback that the Board of Selectmen got today was critical in the sense that they thought that the Board of Selectmen had done nothing to kind of work through the issues, and that the Board of Selectmen, to allow a lawsuit like this to happen, and now it's, you know, they're spending a fortune, we're going to spend a fortune. If they win, we may have to pay their legal fees, and how did we get to this situation, and what do we do to improve the relationship going forward? So hopefully this kind of an outreach also helps us try to get the relationship back on track. We're not interested, I'm not interested in running up legal fees on anybody's part. And if we can sit down and work through these things, it's so much better for everybody. And, you know, we all were made aware early this morning about the court filing. And I'm sure it was a shock to members of the board. And when we get served at our homes today with legal papers and things, it was, you know, it's not something that happens every day in your life. So, you know, we desperately want to make sure that everybody's treated professionally, and that the town knows that the Board of Selectmen's working hard to work through all relationships with everybody. And sometimes you have disagreements, but hopefully, as we've said before, we can disagree without being disagreeable. And unfortunately, you know, 2 weeks ago it got a little disagreeable, and it took a course of action that none of us were anticipating, and hopefully we can get back on track. Kevin, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just let the board know, this agenda item initially had been put on here so that we could, Larry and I had talked, and I was going to offer some thoughts to the board about questions that people have asked about the bid process and the history of it. I had declined to do that when we started it because of the events of the last 24 hours, and because, speaking with counsel this afternoon, he had cautioned that there is still a lawsuit, We are hoping that that will be extinguished by virtue of the fact that we had an opportunity for the craft group to speak tonight, but it is not extinguished yet. So I wanted to be very cautionary and very circumspect in any comments that I make. But I did want to offer just this one comment. I couldn't agree with the chair more. I'm still trying to figure out and sort out exactly how we got to the point where we are at, but I believe it's fair to say that it's reflective of the fact that because we have a law that we have to deal with 30B and we have an open meeting law, that we work within certain narrow confines in terms of conversations we can have, when we can have them, who we can have them with. Everything that the Water Sewer Commission, the Board of Selectmen, and the town manager acting as the chief procurement officer has done in the last 2 weeks has been in constant concert with town council and with further discussions with the Inspector General's office. And we have, all of our actions have been motivated by two single purposes and concerns. One is the best benefit to the taxpayers and the ratepayers of the community of Foxborough, and secondly, consistent with the law as we've been advised that what it provides. At no time during any of what we've been engaged in the last 2 weeks was there ever any intent or hope that we would result in a situation where we currently find ourselves. And we are very hopeful that we can open some dialogue and have some discussions, but just as a cautionary note to all of us, I believe those discussions now will have to go through town council's hands, and I believe and hope that those will be very productive conversations and will allow us to, have some very good things happen. One final comment is that we do have a bid out there right now, and that was advertised today, Rod, I believe, in the Central Register, tomorrow, and bidders will be coming, hopefully, to pick up the bid package in the next week or two. There'll be another pre-bid conference, and hopefully we will receive bids in, I think, April.
Yeah.
End
of April.
End of April. But between now and that time, there are some issues that we most assuredly have to sort through. We are do everything we can to represent the taxpayers' interests in the town, and the craft company is representing their interests. And we have some disagreements right now. But those are not insoluble disagreements, hopefully, and they are disagreements that we will address in a professional and respectful manner and try to work through them. We're trying very, very hard, I know these two gentlemen can attest to, and I'm very, very hopeful that we will work through them in the best interest of Foxborough's taxpayers.
Linda wanted to go next, then I'll go to you, Mark.
Kevin, you're scaring me again of, what I can say, what I can't say, but you know what? I don't think I want to be scared anymore, let's put it that way. I think that my question, again, to Paul is, last week when those folks were here to speak, we didn't know what they were going to speak about. We didn't have any, any idea what they were going to do, but Kevin kind of used his forethought and said, no, they can't speak, that council had already informed him that it wouldn't be a good idea. Was there something that was said tonight that is bad for the town or bad for this RFP or anything? And if you can't answer, you can't answer, but I just wanted to know if there was something that was said that we should be aware of.
I want to emphasize that 2 weeks ago, I was under the impression, and I think the town manager was under the impression, that the craft organization was a bidder. They had registered when they took out papers, when we did our first round, they had signed the papers as a prospective bidder, and that they were a prospective bidder. I heard them say earlier that they were not, but what I understood was on March 21, they sent a letter dated that day. I don't know when it was all received. Don't know whether you're open on Fridays.
I think we got it on the 22nd or the 23rd, something like that, last week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I don't know which date it was, but.
But they made it clear that they were withdrawing from the bidding process. And that puts them in this category of being ordinary citizens, not a commercial vendor looking for economic advantage, but simply a private citizen. They're not in this round. That's, to us, was a game changer between 2 weeks ago and now. And I haven't heard anything said today, and I don't know what was said 2 weeks ago.
Well, Mr. Colbury is walking up behind you, so I think he wants to say something to he wants to answer your question. Can he answer his question first, Mark?
Yeah. All I wanted to say is that on March 5th, we submitted a letter. And in that letter, we said we were not a bidder. And so that information, I'm sure, would have been helpful to you. I don't know if you received that letter or not. But so when we appeared here on the 13th, we had let the chief procurement officer know that we were no longer a bidder, and we would therefore be in the category of ordinary citizen, as Paul just said.
Yeah, ordinary citizen is entitled to be heard.
Right.
Right.
To the extent that you've got prospective bidders coming here trying to find advantage or curry favor or make presentations.
Or just say no, I'm staying out of Foxborough, that's,
Whatever,
right.
that's something that you don't want to have happen. And so that was the general advice then. Now that they're not a bidder, we can actually have a dialogue with them. In fact, we're looking forward to it, reopening a dialogue with them without that limitation hanging over our head.
Good.
Mark, I'll go to you next.
Now, the town hasn't been threatened by a lawsuit, imposed a lawsuit against the town of Foxborough. That's correct, right?
They sued the town of Foxborough.
They are suing the town of Foxborough right now. So that would trigger the town's insurance, correct? So that would, the town would be given a special counsel for that, or are we using the same counsel that we have as a town? I mean, in prior cases, we were appointed counsel from the insurance company that specialized in that situation.
Right.
Therefore, my point is, do we incur costs to the town right now by having Paul have dialogue, or do this has triggered the whole insurance claim? Do we go from there?
I'm going to ask Kevin to answer that for you.
The normal procedure, and I want to have some discussions with town council over the next couple of days, is that we submit the claim to the insurance company. They assign special counsel, and special counsel handles the defense, typically in cooperation with town council. Now, once things get to a certain point, special counsel may take it over completely, and town council isn't involved. In this case, I think there's an opportunity for a lot of cost avoidance by everybody if we allow town council to continue the dialogue with the craft company representatives in the hope that we can resolve this. And I'd like to give that a couple of days to see if it can play out. If it can't, then we will file this claim with the insurance company. They will assign special counsel. Under certain very limited circumstances, they will sometimes allow the town to request that town council handle it rather than have an additional expense where the special counsel has to get up to speed with the issues. Where we're dealing with a lengthy history that's gone over some period of 2 or 3 years, I think that there's great efficacy in this case. If it comes to the necessity that our insurance company allows town council to either co-counsel or be a participant in some way, because that participation would be critical.
Well, that's why I asked the question, can't the board, on the executive session rules, go into the executive session to discuss litigation and have this conversation as far as legal strategy?
Yes, they can. But can I say something else here? The dialogue I want to have with the Patriots, I want to go way beyond the particular lawsuit. I mean, they are raising a whole series of issues, from ownership of land to historical events to all kinds of things. And a lot of these are factual disagreements. And I think the town would be better off if we can sort this. These aren't negotiations at the summit. I'll leave that to the powers that be. But let's get what their contentions are, what their facts are, what are all the details. Show them what we have, and let's eliminate issues that we can actually agree on. You know, if the billboards aren't on our easement, they're not on our easement.
But this can absorb a lengthy cost of taxpayers' dollars to already, expanding account of, paying for attorney fees. So I would like the board to have a discussion on how we want to pursue this matter with the full board here in executive session at our next meeting to discuss how we want to go forward with this. I don't want to just jump into this right now without having full dialogue with the entire board and council and see where we should go from there, because I just don't think it's a knee-jerk reaction we're dealing with here. We need to, we could easily incur quite a cost here, and this is not covered by any agreement with the craft group. So discuss what the deductible is, what the other firm would be, and no disrespect, Paul, I just think this could be lengthy already. It has been already a little bit lengthy right now. I think we need to discuss this and figure, under the rules of an executive session, discuss legal strategy.
I understand.
Right. Obviously, the case was just filed today. I don't know if Kevin's even had time to call the insurance company and tell them that it was filed. And I think that, at least my personal view, to take the next 2 days and try to resolve some things, and if necessary, say to the insurance company, we've been able to potentially settle it, and we want you to reimburse us. It'd be a lot cheaper than going through the whole thing. I think that, we could certainly put a dollar limit on trying to resolve the issue. But one of the things that, Mark, that is concerning, to me at least, is, again, maybe it's factual, but we hear that factually a letter came in on March 5th saying we're not a bidder. It didn't get to you, so you're being asked for advice. You don't have all the information to make the advice.
The letter did go, yeah.
So I'd like our town council to factually report back to us when you receive this March 5th letter from the town. So we know we have some facts. We certainly know the date that it was supposedly written. We know the date that it was probably time-stamped at town meeting. We'd like to get a timestamp as when it was received in your office. Right? And if you could check that tomorrow and notify the chair, I'll notify the rest of the board. But those things are important to us because, frankly, as Linda indicated, and as I read earlier this evening, the quotes from the town manager at the last meeting, he was quite forceful in his opinion and quite threatening as to, if we allowed them to speak, what harm it would do to the town. And as I said that evening to the Patriots and to the people in the audience, not being an attorney and not having town council here, I've got a chief procurement officer saying that the world's going to fall down and the world's going to collapse if I let these people speak, and I really have no choice at that point to say, I just can't have you speak. I'm between a rock and a hard place, and I'm not an attorney. So I asked them respectfully if they would allow me the next day to call Rod. I talked to Kevin, I talked to Rod, and when this March 5th letter got to who is pretty important in understanding your opinion and your recommendation to us, and so I think it's important that we know that. Mark, did I cut you off?
I can agree with your statement there, Larry, but I still would like, the board to vote, or do we just ask the chair to put it on the agenda? We can always take it off the agenda.
I'll put it on the agenda automatically. We got litigation now. It'll be on the agenda for the next meeting. I can guarantee you that.
Right, thank you.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Just an important note for the board. I don't frankly recall a March 5th letter. I know every letter that came in was shipped to council.
March 1st?
March 1st,
March 5th.
whatever the date was.
I think it was March 1st.
There was a whole series of letters. There was one then, there was one on March 21st or 20th or thereabouts. There was a great deal of confusion, and it was perhaps confusion between Rod and I and the Inspector General, and we didn't actually sort it out until this morning, and Larry, you were part of that conference call, where whether the Kraft Company was a bidder or wasn't a bidder, I was operating under the presumption that the IG had indicated that participation of any discussion publicly about the active bid by anybody was not allowed, bidder or no. And in fact, I asked Rod this morning on a conference call with the chair and Larry to ask the IG the very specific question, the advice that they had given that we not allow public discussion, did that matter whether the party with whom we were having the discussion was a bidder or wasn't a bidder? And he made that inquiry, and just this morning we received a clear indication, and if I misspeak, please correct me, that the Inspector General indicated that the inability to have a public discussion was only limited to people who were bidders. That's all it was limited to. Now, we didn't know that till this morning. We didn't have absolute clarification until this morning at 10:30 thereabouts. So all prior representations, whether somebody said they were a bidder, wrote they weren't a bidder, didn't frankly matter, because the presumption was you couldn't have a public discussion with anybody. And I thought that's what the IG had advised. So whether a letter came in on March 1st or whatever the date was and said they weren't bidding didn't matter to me until this morning. And that's when the IG said, doesn't matter. If they're not a bidder, and they clearly are not a bidder, and somebody wants to have a discussion with the board, that's okay. So.
I think the finance director had his hand raised. Would you come to a microphone, though, please?
Just a quick point of information, talking about the letter that was received on March 5th. March 5th was the date that the bids were due for the billboards, and I was the one who opened, the information that came in, and I opened that letter. So that letter was what we believe to be a response to the first round, what has become now the first round of bidding. So I believe that letter was that they're not bidding in that round, but there's a second round.
Oh, I know the letter that's being referenced.
I have it here.
You may not have it because I haven't seen it either.
Looks like Mr. Colbury has it in his hand.
I think the consultant has it, but I don't think I have it. That file, I think, is in the consultant's hands. So I don't know.
Mr. Colbury?
I'd like to also point out, though, at the meeting on the 13th, I said on two separate occasions, the bids have closed effective March 5th, so there is no existing bid. In addition, on March 5th, we sent this letter in which we declared emphatically that we're not a bidder. And so I know Paul and Rod were not here. I suspect if they were here, they would have taken that information, and it would have changed their opinion and their advice to the chief procurement officer. But it was clear on the 13th that there was no bid.
No, you guys take a
We were not
recess for a second.
participating in bid.
What's the matter? I think Pauline's not feeling well.
Okay.
Chief, is the fire chief here?
Can we take a couple minutes,
Is the fire chief here?
Edwin.
We're going to take a 2-minute recess. We have an ill person. The fire chief's coming around the corner. Can I have the room come to order, please?
Larry? The consultant.
Right, I want to wrap up, we didn't quite wrap up the last issue. There was a point of order, a question that was asked that I want to allow. Sir, state your name and address slowly for the record so the town manager can track it.
Sure, my name's Howard Siegel, 3 Catherine Road, Foxborough.
All right, and your question?
My point of order is, I've heard the chair and the town council repeatedly refer to the Patriots in our discussion over the last half hour. Can we identify the entities who were the bidder or not the bidder, who owns the land, who doesn't own the land, and who filed the lawsuit correctly? Sure. Or is it the Patriots?
No, we have that information. Town council, do you want to respond to that?
The entity that filed the lawsuit is FXP LLC, and they allege in the complaint that they are an affiliate with all these other organizations. But basically, it's the craft organization. Do you want to expand on that?
Very well done.
Okay, does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, okay. So why do we continually refer to the Patriots? The Patriots are one thing. Craft is something else. FXP, do we know what office this gentleman holds at FXP? Did he identify that for his discussion?
It's in the complaint. I'm the vice president of FXP.
Okay. for purposes of our discussion tonight, shouldn't we refer to the entities that are involved directly?
Happy to do so.
Okay.
I just think if we start using all these initials, people will be just as confused. If we said NXP,
Right.
they would be, somebody would make a point of order and say, what is NXP? We'd get to the same place.
So in my opening statement, sir, I read that it was FXP and what they requested, et cetera. Frankly, I guess to be candid with you, we're a little loose with the language sometimes, and the Kraft organization that owns all of these companies together, so that those at home know who we're talking about. We've generally used the phrase Kraft organization or the Patriots organization so people know. Someone tuning us in, not having the background, has no idea who FXP is. So, you know, technically you're absolutely correct. We should be saying FXP at all times. We've tried to use the more generic term so people watching can understand what we're talking about.
It just seems like we ought to use the name of the correct entity. If I file a variance, my name's Howard Siegel, and I come in here and I sit down and I say to you, I'd like to be called the Boston Red Sox, because it'd be rather misleading to the people at home and to everybody else. So I think if it's FXP, we should say FXP is doing this, FXP is filing that. If it's a Kraft entity which has a name, we should use the Kraft entity name. Whoever the entity is that's before the board, that's the way we should refer to them.
Thank you very much. All right, are there any other questions or comments on this matter this evening? We will also be discussing later this evening the annual town meeting warrant, which will include an article on there as to whether or not the Board of Selectmen will include an article to allow town meeting to vote on eminent domain or not. And so those of you that are interested in that, you may want to stay for that piece. The next item on the agenda then is the pay plan. And so I'd like to ask our consultant to join us. Again, I'm sorry.
I'm very sorry, Larry. Are you going to be discussing the litigation in executive session this evening?
Well, it wasn't on the agenda. Obviously, it happened within the last 48 hours, and it was unanticipated from that sense. We do not have a full board here, so I think we'll wait till we have a full board. If Jim were to arrive later tonight from his hearing, Paul, even though it's not on the agenda, since the lawsuit was just filed, can we discuss that in executive session or not?
Yes.
That was a slow yes.
Well, the idea is to give the public notice of events that occur so that they can participate. They can't participate in an executive session. And if it's an unforeseen event, the Attorney General allows you to take action on things that were not known 48 hours in advance to make it on the agenda. So I take it this is not something that was known before 48 hours because it just got filed. So it fits that category. The public's not prejudiced because they wouldn't be entitled to participate anyway. So that's how I got to yes. I just had to think it through a little bit when you asked me the question so that I could get to the right answer.
Thank you very much, Paul.
If I could, I'd like to ask if this board would consider authorizing the town council and Attorney Hoffman to work with us to try to resolve this litigation. And I think it would be very useful as well if you could consider appointing one of the select men or select women to be a participant in that discussion. As Attorney Durensis mentioned earlier, we have a number of issues before us, but the issues that were the subject of this lawsuit are relatively discrete, and I think that people working together in good faith could probably resolve them and do so in a way that would be the most efficient and least costly way possible for both us and the town of Foxborough.
And I think what we had said earlier is it seemed to make sense to take a couple of days and try to do that. Notify our insurance council, indicate to them we're trying to resolve this in hopes that if we can resolve it, they would reimburse us less our deductible for any costs that we incurred. I think that's what we had talked about going in. If we go into executive session, we'll talk some more about it. Kevin?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, just a reminder that in the Strong Manager Act, so-called charter, there is a provision about the settlement of lawsuits, and I don't happen to have it memorized, but I would be happy to get it because I think that is the way that we are required to proceed. I don't know if in any way it's at variance with what Jim suggests or not, but it is the requirement.
A requirement of what?
Of how we settle lawsuits. There's specific language in there about settlement of lawsuits.
On the Strong Town Manager Act?
Yes.
So are you saying that you would decide whether town council or insurance council, is that what you're talking about, or?
No, I don't remember the exact words, but it's words, the manager and the selectmen in consultation arrive at the settlement and, oh, thanks.
Wow.
I'll have to find it.
Did Frank just hand you that?
I always carry one around with me.
Compromise litigation.
Well, suffice to say there's language in here somewhere. I know there is, because this has come up before repetitively during settlement of claims against the town, and I don't know where it is in here off the top of my head, but I know it involves consultation between the town manager and the Board of Selectmen. That, of necessity, would have to happen in executive session, because it is the settlement of a lawsuit, obviously, with presumably the participation of town council. And if it's the board's pleasure to do that tonight, we can certainly do it.
Right.
I just wanted, yeah, thanks, Jim. I just wanted Jim to know, I don't know if the specific request can be structured that way or not, because we've got to abide by the charter.
Right. Well, maybe after we finish the pay plan, maybe while we talk about the town warrant, one of your associates might pull that section of the Town Manager Act, so we can have that if we can get into executive session on the other issue.
Sure.
Okay?
I think the most important point is if you could authorize, or Kevin, if you could authorize Rod to work with me, I'll happily do it.
Right.
Just
Thank you.
so that we're clear on that point, that is absolutely the case. I think we are committed to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's see, we said we were going to do the pay plan at 8. We're not that far behind, I guess. So would you like to join us?
On our agenda, yeah.
Would you like to join us and introduce yourself to the public? Please have a seat.
Can we invite the employees who came to participate?
Hopefully, there's going to be enough room for them all.
But it's their agenda item, so.
Yep, well, not trying to say they can't, but if we,
You should have room. You should have room.
hold on.
Do you want
Paul?
Rod to stay?
Paul,
Paul, what? Board,
if we're going to meet, if we're going to discuss the litigation in executive session, it might be wise for you to stay around, if that's possible. You can decide if you need 2 or 1. Right? You make that decision? Okay.
You got a coin?
All right. Okay, I think we're okay room-wise, room size-wise. All right, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Sandy Stapchinsky, and I'm president of Human Resources Services. We are a private consulting firm that provides technical assistance to cities and towns in all areas of human resource management and also general management. The company has been in existence for more than 15 years. I personally have over 25 years of experience and has provided technical assistance to cities and towns, probably about 250 in Massachusetts, and we have done over 500 assignments. Compensation classification is a big part of the company's services, and I'd say it's about 75% of our work that we do. So we were delighted to be selected to do this study. It's been a very comprehensive process with the town. We were charged with, the overall goal was to come up with a new plan that was not only externally equitable, but internally equitable as well, and to develop something that had a longer lifespan than what you currently have, and to also develop something that was more in tune with the realities of the market. So the current system was a little bit disjointed in having a separate classification plan for management and then a separate for non-union, and we consolidated the two of them. The percentages between steps were extensive, so we made it more reasonable in line with the economy and the realities of what it is today. And it also allows some growth for employees within the pay range. So the more specific objective was to look at and analyze the labor market from comparable municipalities and compare Foxborough to those communities. We collected and analyzed data from about 12 or 15 communities in the region that we thought were comparable to Foxborough in terms of a number of specific criteria and factors, and they included not only population and location and income per capita, but also the equalized valuation per capita, your form of government and your structure, how you are, structured, the number of positions that you have, and also the size of your budget. And of course, as we know, that Foxborough is a little bit unique, having the stadium, and that has a direct impact on many municipal positions in the town, which other communities don't have to deal with. That is unique to this community. So anyway, part of the process involved interviewing the employees and the supervisors, and they were a wonderful group to deal with. We had group interviews, which was just wonderful. It showed a lot of camaraderie, and it was a nice way to do the interviews. Everybody filled out position analysis questionnaires, and job descriptions were looked at and updated as needed. And we have a ranking system that we used for the study that helps to develop the classification plan. The new salary schedule is going to allow some room for growth while ensuring affordability to the town. That's really important to note, because in your old plan, the percentages were a little bit generous between the steps, which now are more in line with what other communities are giving. There is in the final report also the methodology for maintaining and updating this plan, and also guidelines and regular economic issues that you have to deal with from one year to the next. But this pay plan, I believe, would be good as long as it's maintained and updated with the cost of living. It should last the town 7 to 10 years. It is a very good system in place. We initially placed employees, we had to place them on the new pay plan, and we had to transition them, and we had to come up with a methodology to do that was fair and equitable and cost-effective for the town. So the best way to do that was to place employees on the step closest to, but not less than what they currently make, on their new pay range, if you will. And that resulted in a cost of, that Kevin will talk to you about in a little bit. But really, you have to subtract from that cost what you would have given anyway for a cost of living. So it's not an exorbitant amount of money to implement this in the next fiscal year. We're recommending that the classification plan and the salary schedule be implemented for FY13. And I think you should all have copies of the plan, right?
Right,
You do have copies. Okay, good. And one of the things that we recommend as sort of a phase 2, perhaps, is to tie this to a performance system, and that would be really important. I've talked to Kevin about it. In fact, I have a system that I typically use in a lot of communities, and I always now recommend when I do these studies to tie it to performance, so that, in order to get a step increase or any movement within the range, there has to be some measurement, some performance metric, rather than having a longevity system, which really is an old-fashioned system, and communities are getting away from that now. And would recommend sort of a system where you have goals and objectives for the management and the supervisory, and then maybe like a uniform performance system with, basic criteria for the lower level jobs. But really having benchmarks and accountability, in order to get that next step in your pay increase. Now that having said, one of the things I want to differentiate is how people move between the step, from the steps from minimum to maximum. It has to do more with the employee, such as performance, but the overall salary schedule should be updated to reflect the COLA, if not every year, at least every other year. And I know in the last few years, it's been a negligible, 1%, if that, or very, very small. But, I think in the coming years, it's going to change. I think the economy is starting to get a little bit better. So the classification plan that you have in front of you has the grades, and the groupings by grade indicate that there was a decision made either externally because of the market or internally that they should be grouped together in a particular grade. And the salary schedule shows the hourly and then the annual and the weekly. And one of the things that we recommend, because there seems to be a discrepancy as to the number of hours that a full-time employee works. Some work 35, some work 40, and we're recommending that be standardized. We're also recommending that any increases in pay be standardized as well on the annual basis, probably July 1, everybody instead of anniversary dates, and then that way you can prepare better for the budget, and it's not a constant administrative nightmare, with so many employees and so many different anniversary dates and so forth. I met with all the employees, and we did, have a meeting with them, and we presented it to them, and they had an opportunity to review the plan and to offer some comment and input, and based on their input, we went ahead and we made some minor adjustments again. And we also met with, the department heads and the supervisor, and the same thing. And we also met with the wage personnel board members. And everybody seemed somewhat, in my opinion, they were very receptive to this plan. I think Kevin can talk a little bit about the cost out for this. Yeah, if you want to.
Before we get to that, can I just ask you
Sure.
a question? I had a conversation with the town manager. Some members of the Board of Selectmen receive phone calls from elected boards.
Okay.
And those elected boards felt neglected, that nobody talked to them. And the employees work with them in a very close way. And Kevin responded to me that the Strong Town Manager Act requires him to recommend the plan and the Board of Selectmen to approve it up or down. So can you share what conversations you had with other boards and committees within the town that are elected by the citizens to get their input on their view of what their employees do and the value their employees provide, and how you included them in the dialogue?
Sure. Well, first of all, everybody was, we had an orientation session at the onset of the study, and everybody was invited to that to learn about.
When you say everybody, did you invite the planning board, the Board of Health, the water and sewer commissioners?
No.
No.
Did we?
Okay.
No.
All right, so,
We didn't.
and I'm just trying to
Sure. Yeah.
Those boards and committees who were elected,
Right.
some of them called individual board members, including myself,
Right.
to register their complaint that they didn't feel respected in the process, that nobody sought their input or shared the output with them.
Right.
And so I'm just trying to understand.
I'm
Kevin
trying
gave
to,
me his view, but you work with, you
Sure.
said 200 towns.
Sure,
So
yeah.
in a town, when you work with multiple elected boards and committees, do you normally include them in your dialogue or not?
When you have a strong town manager form of government like you have, it's really the department heads and the town manager that I'm dealing with. In communities that do not have a town manager, that might have a weaker town administrator or no town administrator at all, then I might be dealing with some of the elected boards. But in this situation, it was very clear that I was working with the town manager. Now, I do want to say, though, that employees had an opportunity to fill out questionnaires, and I think in some instances they did have maybe their elected boards review the questionnaires. So that was an opportunity for them to have input as well. But our job was to have group interviews, and we said it at the orientation and in our proposal, with the department heads and the employees, and the project manager for the study would be Kevin. And also, I just wanted to say I worked closely with Kevin and Sandra Herman, Christina in his office, and also Randy, your finance director, was tremendous throughout this whole process, and also Lisa, I think, so that was really the group. There was sort of like a group of people that I worked with, but every employee and every supervisor department had an opportunity for an interview. People had opportunities for questionnaires to review and to fill out. They had opportunity also at the orientation meeting. But you do have a strong town manager, so it's a little bit different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Just to help out with the board, Larry, I think it's, as I said, after we talked about it a little more, I think it's nothing wrong with the idea at all of circling back. I don't think it should, that it should just be the elected boards, the appointed boards too. I mean, where there are employees that have involvement with them. What we did is we followed past precedent for how pay plans have been done. Unfortunately, the last time one was done, it was prior to the Strong Manager Act. So what was done is the pay plan was done. It was presented to the wage board. The wage board, in turn, presented it directly to town meeting. And I think along the way, there was a recommendation from AdCom and the Board of Selectmen per the norm for town meeting articles. In this case, we are now under the Strong Manager Act, which provides that the manager proposes a pay plan. In this case, the pay plan is the one Sandy prepared, and then the Board of Selectmen adopts or not. So we didn't really, frankly, think to go to the other boards. It wasn't a disrespect. It just wasn't even thought of. It hadn't ever been done before, and we didn't think to do it this time. Excuse me. But I'm happy to do it, and in fact, set in motion today, asking department heads to talk to their boards. And tomorrow I'll circle back with some of the others and ask them to talk to them. So we're happy to include them. There was no intent to slight anybody. It's just, frankly, we didn't think of it.
Okay.
So on to the money side of this. So there are a couple, the intent of this plan was to accomplish a number of goals. First, to be sure that our pay plan for our non-union employees is competitive compared to the other communities that were selected from the Department of Revenue database as comparable to us, and that they have a number of different statistics they use to determine comparability. And the reason you do that is because, frankly, the whole point of a wage plan is to keep good employees from leaving, and basically the other towns are our competition. And when we have a vacancy, to be able to competitively recruit skilled people, and again, those other towns are our competition, so that's who we compare to. Then the other part of the goal is to ensure internal fairness so that each position in it is paid, according to the degree of responsibility and other traits that the job has compared to other jobs inside the organization. So we hire a professional to do that, and the reason we hire an outside professional, frankly, is because no one in the organization, specifically me, can do it without bias creeping in. It's just not possible. So we hire an outsider who's got no biases, completely objective, and I have not altered her recommendation in any way. Now, there are some very distinct advantages to this new plan I want to make you aware of. First, it accomplishes all the goals that I just said. Secondly, it replaces a current 6-step plan with 6% between steps with a 10-step plan with 2.5% between steps. Now, the reason we did that is very specifically for the following purpose. Currently, there is no merit system. Employees get a step from year to year basically on their anniversary date until they hit step 6, which is somewhere around the 60th percentile or so compared to our target communities. We're not sure exactly where it is, but it's around there. So the maximum that any of our employees can get paid is somewhere around the average for the target communities. Now, what does that mean? That means that really high-speed employees that we have who have been with us for a while, that we are in very great danger of losing them because we're only paying, the top they can earn is average compared to other communities. So what are they going to do? They're going to leave. When they get experience, They're going to look to better their lot and go to other communities. And indeed, we've had a fair degree of turnover. Not surprising, frankly. The second thing that we've noticed is that when we've done recruitments in the last couple of years, at least the ones that I've done for you, we have been utterly unable to attract qualified candidates under the old pay plan. And in fact, I have come to you on 3 occasions with the DPW director, the water superintendent, and the HR director and asked your very specific permission to use the new pay plan in order to recruit them. And consequently, we've had very good success in attracting very qualified candidates. But in the old plan, we've had terrific problems. In the lower ranks, below the department head level, what we found is that we cannot attract anybody at the opening wages. Invariably, in order to get the person that we decide we want, when we get to the point where we're negotiating salary, we end up having to negotiate to give them a salary much higher on our pay scale, if not even at the max, just to match what they're currently getting wherever else they're working. So basically what we found is our current pay plan is outmoded. It's not competitive, in a word. The second problem with the current pay plan is it's an automatic pay increase. There's no merit. So let's say 2 years ago we offered a 3% COLA. So an employee who was not maxed out on step 6 got a 3% COLA, and they got a 6% step on top of that. They get a 9% raise. That is really just not, no one is doing that. That's just an extremely high increase. So in the new plan, we've reduced that to 2.5%, and we've made it movement on the steps from one step to the higher step, completely and solely dependent upon a merit plan, which will now be developed following hopeful adoption of this plan. So what we've done is we've taken an automatic excessive pay increase, step increase plan, and replaced it with a more modest plan where the employee can strive for a higher end goal, ultimately the 10th, which is a much better pay compared to our peers, but they've got to get there by completing a merit, an annual goal plan and a merit review and all that. So it's going to take a while to get there. But the employees can strive, the excellent employees can strive for better pay at the higher scales. So this is a very purposeful design that we've created, known as incentive. It's as simple as that, pay for performance. So, what do we do about implementation? 2 other notes. This was presented to the employees, and I don't want to speak for them, but I will say that the large majority of the employees endorsed the plan, and they are here and can certainly speak for themselves and say whatever it is they'd like to say to the board. The Wage and Personnel Board was also presented with the plan. Now, unfortunately, their meeting had not been posted, so they could not formally vote, but they took a consensus of unanimous support for one of the ways to implement, and I'll tell you about that, and I don't know if there's a wage board representative here or not tonight. So, there are a couple different ways that this could be implemented. One way, the normal way, is that, as Sandy has already indicated, we move everybody from the old plan to the new plan to the step that they now, to the grade that they're supposed to be on, and the step that they're closest to, but not less than. The idea being nobody gets a pay cut to move on to the new plan, but nobody necessarily gets a pay raise other than the coincident amount that it takes to move them onto the new plan. And then what the hope is that everybody falls in those first 3, 4, 5 steps, so they've got room for professional growth over the next 4, 5, or 6 years as they go up the step chart according to merit. And indeed, what we found is that, by and large, was the experience. Now, there is a cost associated with just taking all the current employees and putting them on the new plan, and the cost, in this case, is $135,000. Now, that is not giving anyone a pay raise. That is just moving them from the old plan to the new plan. When we realized that the cost was $135,000, I didn't feel comfortable saying to the employees or to the board or to the town, let's implement the plan right now in the current fiscal year at a cost of $135,000, and then on July 1st give to the employees covered by it a 1-1 COLA, which is scheduled, in a step that would have otherwise been due. Because the cost of that would have been another $106,000 on top of the 135. And frankly, that was excessive, and I think we all knew that that would not meet with your approval. And even if it met with the board's approval, it would be unlikely to meet with the AdCom's approval and ultimately town meeting approval. Because while town meeting and AdCom don't approve the plan, they do have to recommend the funding of it, and town meeting ultimately has to approve it, just like a union contract. So what I offered to the employees was, what if everybody was placed on the new plan, and in return for this plan, which offers, future professional growth, everybody gave up their step that would have otherwise been due them between July 1 of this year and June 30th of next year, and they give up the 1-1 split COLA. Remember the July 1, 1%, January 1, another 1%, that they give up that COLA. So instead of the town spending 106 plus 135, it spends just 135. So the difference is the cost of the town is approximately $24,000 to implement this plan versus what we were going to do anyways and have already budgeted. Everybody with me?
Yep.
Okay. So I presented that to the employees, and the employees were pretty enthusiastic, I think it's fair to say, about doing that, except there were 23, about a quarter of the employees covered by this plan, who were due to get a step next year. And it's already budgeted. So they know, as they look at the fiscal 13 budget that hopefully later tonight you're going to consider, they know they were going to get a 1-1 split and a 6% step. There were 23 people that were about to have that. They felt kind of bad because if you take the amount of money that they were going to get in July 1, the 1-1 split, and the 6% step that they were going to get on their anniversary date sometime during the fiscal year, that adds up to a certain amount of money. And when you compare just going on to the step plan, instead, there were 23 people who lost collectively $29,000 approximately between them. And so they felt pretty badly about that. And so they put that issue right out there and said, hey, wait a minute, we were going to get this, so now you want us to take the good news of the pay plan and take a heck of a pay cut in order to implement it. We don't think that's fair. And I said to them, look, had we done this earlier in the year, been able to get it done, we would have never had written the budget, and people wouldn't have the expectation of getting that 6% step in the new fiscal year. And maybe the expectation wouldn't have been there. But it's there now, because it's pretty tough when an employee sees what they're going to get next year, and it's in the budget, and they know it's all set, and it's budgeted, and it's balanced, and they're ready to get it. And then you say to them, hey, great news, we got a new pay plan for you, it's wonderful, and you're going to love it, and someday you're going to be able to get a lot more money, but by the way, it's going to cost you a lot of dough the first year we implement it, and it's probably going to take you 2 or 3 years to catch up to where you would have been under the old plan. That doesn't go over so hot. So what we did is I put that out there to the employees, and I said, look, we can identify what the cost is to give everyone who was going to get a step under the old plan at 6% and give them a step on the new plan, a one-time step, one step at 2.5 under the new plan. And then effective July 1, 2013, everyone is on the merit plan, and the only way they get a step is if they qualify under merit. I said we will calculate what that costs. I will report that to the board. And the board can look at implementation in one of 2 ways. Either implement it without that step or implement it with the step. So I put that to the employees, and the employees, the majority of the employees felt that giving that 2.5 step was the fair thing to do under the circumstances. Because now, those people who were going to get a 1-1 COLA plus a 6% step compared to implementation of the plan and a 2.5 are still going to lose money. There's no doubt about it. They're still going to lose money. But if they qualify for another 2.5 on their anniversary in 2013 due to merit, then they will be approximately back where they would have been. And then as they look forward to 14 and 15 and 16, you know, if their performance is good, they can grow professionally and get more pay. So everybody felt that was a fairly reasonable compromise. The cost to give that step to those 23 people is $29,000. I got that number right? 29.4. So think of it this way. If we do exactly what we've already budgeted, i.e. a 1-1 COLA and the 6% step for whoever was going to get it, the current plan, it's going to cost the town $106,000. If we implement the new plan, it's going to cost the town $135,000. If we implement the new plan and then you grant to those 23 people who were going to get a 6% step but have now lost it, a 2.5% step, it costs another $29,000. So round numbers, 165 versus 135 versus 106. So, presented that to the Wage and Personnel Board. They also felt that the fair thing to do was to give that one-time 2.5% step at the higher cost. And while they can't formally recommend because their meeting wasn't posted, that was the I can report to you that was the unanimous consensus of the Wage and Personnel Board.
Who's on the Wage and Personnel Board these days?
Is
Gary Whitehouse. Oh, Gary can tell you. There he is. I'm sorry.
Yes, Kevin is correct. Yeah, we did take a unanimous discussion, a unanimous decision that was the proper way to go. It's fair.
So that concludes the report to the board, and I think that's all the comments Sandy and I have to offer the board, and I don't know what other thoughts other people have, or if the board has questions, happy to answer them.
So, are there any employees that would like to come forward and make a statement? Seeing no hand, you want to come up to the microphone, though?
Although not an employee at the moment, former employee, I would like to make one comment on the process.
Leo, would you mind coming to a microphone, though, so folks at home can hear you?
Okay, Leo Potter, retired water superintendent. The question I would like to raise in the process, we did submit questionnaires, we did review our old job descriptions and information in. After that, nothing was heard back on what the new job descriptions were, and prior to the meeting where the results were put out, nobody really knew what was in their job description, where they fit, and in our case, where our people felt or fell with the new reorganization of the DPW with the water and highway department. So they don't know what effect that had, what their descriptions looked like, were the descriptions correct in their duties, and where they fell. So there was some consternation on that part. And like I say, there was no feedback when it was final, when it was submitted. Either the department had to look at it or consult with the people, or to solicit information to see if it's correct. They did say at the meeting, if you've got a question, you can come see where you fall and what your description is. And that's the comment I have to say on the part of my people, my former people.
All right, thank you, Leo.
Just to answer Leo's question for the board's edification, employees were asked to complete a questionnaire, a job audit. They were asked to comment on the draft job description, but it is not the case that employees finalize their own job description. That is the job of management. And so the final job descriptions did not go back to the individual employees for their approval, because that's entirely inappropriate. They were approved, finalized by the consultant, and will be available as soon as they're delivered, for use in the future. But it was never the intention that the final job description would go back to the employee so he or she can approve their own job.
I don't think I heard Leo say that they needed to approve it. I think what Leo indicated is a closed-loop process so that people understood where it was going and give any additional feedback.
Did it really reflect what they had put in as input is what it was?
Right.
And then in their cases, what the new requirements of what's in the job are taken care of. That's the problem. People were in a vacuum as to where things were on that.
Okay. Any other employees want to please come forward? Or elected board members?
Thank you. I'm not worthy to be called an employee of the town.
As Vice Chair of the Planning Board, my name is Bill Greeter, and I would strongly urge that in the process such as this, where there is a change in how things have been done, the elected boards certainly are not familiar with the finite process of the Strong Town Managers Act, and as this board, the sitting board, is finding out there are several things that you used to be responsible for that you no longer are responsible for. And so we value our employees, our massive staff of 2, as do the other elected boards, and we certainly think it is not only a responsible thing for us to participate in the discussion on where their wages would fall and their duties and how they are compensated. We would certainly expect in the process that all elected boards would have the opportunity to give their input.
So can I put you on the spot and ask you if,
like being at home,
as the planning board looked at your 2 employees, did you have comments on where that you thought that they were properly, that their job descriptions were properly, were they vetted on the scale was proper? Were you satisfied with how the consultant placed them?
Well, what we saw was, and I'm not sure if it was the final product, so I hesitate to say if what we saw was what you're seeing tonight. But we did have some, I want to say issues, but consternation on what we saw where our town planner landed, and also we were concerned because Gabby is one of the infamous 23 or 24 or whatever, and we certainly would have lobbied to go with the compensation that would reduce the amount that she was going to lose.
I can tell through the chair, Bill, I can tell you that those concerns were relayed to us. It did result in a review of the planner position and her placement on a higher grade than had been originally contemplated because of the comments that were made. And that is reflected in this final draft that you have and may not have been reflected in the draft you saw earlier.
Okay, great.
Now, some of the employees did talk to their boards, and I know the planner talked to you guys. I know other employees that talked to their boards, but I have to admit we did not make a universal outreach to each elected board or each appointed board. But I know employees were going back to their boards because board members were participating in job description editing, and we did that together. And so it wasn't as perfect an effort as it could have been. I'm happy to fix that. There was no slight intended, but we did fix that. We did hear that concern.
Great. So officially, we would lobby for you folks to adopt the special compensation for those 23 or whatever to soften the impact. And I think it's a great idea that we standardize the process, because it is, when something's so confusing, you have to bring in a consultant to figure out what the hell's going on. There's a problem with whatever you're looking at. So
Thanks,
I
Bill.
appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, please.
Gordon Green from the Planning Board. I hear that you did make a change that may have made a position that we felt quite inequitable. More so, I would like to request that the board delay implementation until we have a chance to see what it is and see if we concur with it. I think it's very important that we are the elected board. We went out and we hired the talent. We came up with the criteria that we wanted. We got capability. I want to make sure that it's equitably treated. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Do I see any other hands? Okay, one in the back. You want to come up front, please?
Simons, the chief assessor, and I just want to ask if I had some concerns, and I didn't hear back if these concerns were solved or addressed. So I just wondered how I could find out if it was addressed or not.
Sure. We had a number of employees who questioned where their grade was, and so we had those employees talk directly to Sandy, because again, we want an independent, objective look at that, not the town manager or anyone else. Sandy reviewed those requests, and I believe 3 of them resulted out of probably some 15 or 16 requests. 3 of them resulted in an adjustment. All of the others, after Sandy's review, were not found to be merited. I wish I could tell you that we could put everyone on the pay plan where they wanted to be.
But Kevin, that's not what she asked.
You could have, she needed feedback, and she didn't. It's just like we were just talking about, that full circle didn't finish up. So just to say, well, some people got it and some people didn't, that doesn't answer her question, and maybe some others out there that, took the time and went and spoke with Sandy and asked the questions, and then between you two, I guess, or whoever, came up with, yeah, we can bump this or we can't bump this, but certainly circle back with the individual that took the time to reach out to you and Sandy, correct?
I think
right?
that we did, we did do that. We had the questionnaires, we had the interviews. This was, the job descriptions that you currently have are about 4 or 5 years old. They're not really super old job descriptions. So the changes were not sweeping and gigantic for a lot of the positions. What was really the problem with this pay plan was you're comparing your salary schedule to the market. That was the main issue that really needed to be corrected here. And what we did was, and then in the end, we did have the meetings with the employees to review the draft of the classification plan and the compensation plan. If anybody had any comments, they could contact me. I'm not sure I got any other, from the meeting that we just had, I'm not sure I got a phone call or an email.
I talked to you after the meeting, and you said you will consider it, but I never heard back, so that's
So
all
when
I
was that
wanted.
meeting that you had that conversation?
We had we had a meeting
But was
last
not,
week. Yeah.
but basically the way that we would take the input from the employees, but it's ultimately our decision and our professional judgment in the end as to what the final will be, and then you
Right, but
receive the report.
let me just stop you for a second. Here's the problem.
We're not saying anything, I'm not saying anything about what you've done. I'm just saying that, Kevin mentioned that, several people at the end of the day came back and said this, that, or the other thing, and what happened is somewhere the communication didn't get back to, for example, one person, and there may be several others out there that...
There might have been some confusion on that. The intent was not to go back to the employee. The intent was to take the information, the consultant to decide if it was merited, if so, to make an adjustment, and if not, then she would not make the adjustment. I think there was some confusion that the consultant would go back to each individual employee and give them an individual answer, and that was never the intention.
Well, but let's look at it this way. If you ask someone for feedback and you don't get back to them, shame on you. If you're asking people to give you feedback and you don't close the loop with them, why would they keep giving you feedback? And all this young lady is asking is, I raised a question, you told me to ask my questions, I raised my question, no one got back to me. You could have said, you're wrong, we're not going to change it, you don't understand all the facts. All she was asking for was a closed loop discussion.
But she didn't ask me to call her back. She just wanted to tell me her input, which I went back and I looked at, and our feedback to the town is our final report. That's ultimately our final feedback, is our recommendation. We did our analysis, we did our thorough review of this study, and the town received a draft report, and then they received a final report. We don't sit down with every single employee and go through an appeals process. If you want to have an appeals process, that's a whole different game. It's a whole different process. In that case, there has to be a structure set in place that's uniform, and there has to be guidelines for everybody. This was not intended to be an appeals process.
She didn't say she filed an appeal. She said she had a question and someone didn't get back to her. Yeah, go ahead,
I
Mark.
thought I answered it at the meeting.
I don't think you did.
A couple of questions I have, but I'm going to get right to the gist here, is that if I was sitting on the other side of this table right now, and I'm employed by the town of Foxborough, I'd be intimidated to talk in this open session to anybody. I mean, you got the job, you know, your job, and people are intimidated.
Supervisors are sitting here,
They're
yeah.
sitting right here. I just don't think that's fair. I think the board should probably take this under consideration, have any of the town employees that want to call us in confidentiality, you can call me or any other board member, and get their input. I understand what you're saying. You're not up for the rebuttal. You're making the report. That's it. But we need to be open to the community, our employees, so they should contact us. I can read some eyes out here, and there's some uncomfortable people out here. All right, so I think that we should take this under advisement, put on the agenda in the future, and give the opportunity for some of these employees to contact. Everybody here has got a board member they talk to. And if they have a concern, well, you don't talk to me, Randy?
Only if you call me, Mark.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, hold on, I'm not done, hold on. Well, that just seemed, right there, that comment seemed to me a little inappropriate, because I think we have a good relationship.
We do know, but that's my MO. I don't reach out to board members because that's practice. I reach out,
Right,
board member reaches out to me,
but-
then I respond to
but
the board
we-
member. I do not influence policy by politicking you.
Right, I understand that, but, you know, but you weren't the only one to speak out right then and there.
Because, well.
We don't have board. We don't have a board.
We don't have a board.
Well, you got us. If you have a question, if you ever approach me with a question, I'd answer it.
want one at a
But
time.
the thing is, I feel it's confrontational here, all right? And to avoid any intimidation, they should be able to, 2 weeks is not much time for people to be able to reach out to their board or our board. They're elected, whatever board you belong to. And my other question was, how long do the employees have to plan, to review the plan, how much time? And the other question, Kevin, I've been here a while, who's turned over in the town other than retirement? I really don't know the answer, how many?
Like eight months.
8 in your department?
Over the last 8 years.
No, let's stay in the last 18 months. Because Kevin said we have a
Say-
lot of turnover.
Yes.
What is a lot? We need to have specifics, not just general comments. So what is a lot?
I think town-wide in the last year, it's probably 4 or 5.
Out of how many?
Out of about 80, well, about 60, about 60-something full-time that are covered by the plan, because the plan also covers summer seasonal workers and part-timers and folks like that, where obviously that's 100% turnover. So of the permanent employees that are covered by the 60-odd, probably 4 or 5. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say that's a giant problem.
There were quite a few retirees.
Yeah.
Well, George Young retired from the health department. Well, I'm just saying, people I've known have retired, too. I'm asking the questions. I
No,
need the input to make a proper
Yeah,
decision here.
I think Mark can answer the question. You're talking about people who leave town service, not through retirement, but leave to go to another job. And
Well,
that was,
that's my next question is.
That was
if-
4 or
Do you, Randy, and this is directed to Randy, you just think you've lost 8 people in your department in the last?
For the last 8 years.
All right, eight people in the last 8 years? I know a lot of people do exit poll interviews. Did you do any of those with these people?
Yes,
I
I
mean, I'm
did.
just trying to give him some.
I did with all of them, yes.
Some say they went because they got a better job in another town, a higher pay raise.
Or terminated.
Yes, I did those exit interviews in the cases where it was for a reason other than a termination, put it that way. Because there's no point, and if I fire them, there's no point in my asking them why you're leaving. So if it was for some other reason, then yes, I did an exit interview, and there was a variety of reasons. And I'm not going to represent to the board, you know, that people leaving to go to other towns for better pay is an epidemic. That's not the case. But we have had it happen in, you know, a few instances. I'd say 3 or 4 a year, something like that. Not a big problem. One other comment that I just wanted to make, I think Mark has a valid point. For you folks to adopt this plan, you need to have some level of assurance that the people who are covered by it want you to do so. So if you haven't heard from people, this is one of the very few occasions when I will ask employees to talk to board members directly instead of going through the chain of command that they're supposed to, and tell you frankly, do they like this or don't they? Now, one cautionary note: it is not possible to build a pay plan and have 100% of the people covered by it happy, because if we gave you a pay plan where 100% of the people covered by it were happy because they were all getting a big raise, then I would be giving you a skewed pay plan, which is not what I intend to do, and it's not what this consultant was instructed to do. So it is likely you will hear from people who are unhappy, disproportionately to the people who are happy.
I'd like
who
to hear from
think
the
this.
happy ones, too.
I just mentioned that, Mark, because I think it is perfectly reasonable for the board to want some level of assurance that the people covered by this embrace it, because why would you adopt it if the people covered by it are unhappy by it? So I think that's appropriate. But I would encourage employees, to contact you and do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that in this one limited instance, or voice their concern. Yeah. But just be prepared for that reality that not everyone got what they thought they deserved, and there's no way we can do that because we had a fair number of appeals, and they were very, very thoroughly scrubbed, and they were not merited. And at the end of the day, the report is and must be the consultant's independent report to me and to you. It is not my report, although I embrace it and adopt it, but it has to be the consultant's work back to us as her professional effort. And so some people aren't going to be happy with it.
Oh, as an employer, I understand that. There's no doubt about it. But I understand this took place last week. Yeah. Now it's on the agenda. And I like to do a little of my own interviewing, too. That's all.
Mark, let me just comment to that, is that if we were doing this at a company as opposed to a municipality, you're not going to go back to all the employees. But what bothers me is this process took way too long. We were talking about this at a prior town meeting, and we never got it into the town meeting, so it's extended over a period of time. When we don't close the loop when employees raise questions, when we don't meet with the elected boards and commissions and take their input, the process seems flawed. And so I need extra time so that those boards and committees, those elected folks, are able to give us their input, as some of them did over the last week by calling us and giving their view. I'd like to ask that you and us reach out to those boards and committees and make sure that their opinions are heard. It isn't a popularity contest, so you can't put it out and every employee does. It's just not going to work that way. Yeah. It's our responsibility to have comfort that the consultant has done the process properly, she's done the analysis properly, and from a theory standpoint. It's difficult when someone throws out, well, we've had lots of turnover, and we want most people to be on step. Hopefully, everyone fits into steps 1 through 5. Well, I don't want hopefully. I want. Okay, 100% fit in steps 1 through 5, or whatever it might be. I don't want to talk general comments, and so we get in a habit here sometimes with discussions where people throw things and maybe it sticks to the wall and maybe it doesn't. So when someone says to me, we have lots of turnover and hopefully everyone falls into steps 1 through 5. I want data. I want to make sure that's correct, and I want to know what the philosophy is. Do we want to be in the 50th percentile with the communities around us, or do we think because of the unique need that Foxborough has, we need to be better than the 50th percentile? And where do our employees fit today in that scale of things? And so to me, I'm more interested in understanding the theory behind it and making sure that the loops were closed with employees that raise questions and that we met with the elected boards and commissions than I want to have individual conversations with employees, because I'm not sure that there's anybody on the board, but I'll speak for myself, that understands this particular job of any of the 60 employees that are in the study. So if you don't understand what they do and you haven't seen their job description, the feedback makes it kind of difficult. That's why we hired you. You had those discussions. You looked at the job they did. You looked at the job descriptions. You compared them to 15 other towns. You're in a much better position to make that evaluation than we. What I have to be comfortable for as a board member is that you weren't unduly influenced by anybody, and that those that had a chance to speak were responded to, and those that should have had a chance to speak were asked. And I think we need to do some work there before I'd be prepared to approve it. But I'll say to the employees here, you can reach out, but I don't know that I can have a very intelligent conversation about your job because I don't know what you do day in and day out. That's not my job as a board member, to know what you do day in and day out. That's why we have supervisors and managers and directors and a town manager and everyone else.
Just wanted to answer a couple of the concerns. Clearly, I think I didn't come here tonight expecting that the board was going to take a vote, frankly. I expected you would want some time to peruse this. So a couple of things we'll do over the next couple of weeks. First, we'll reach out to those other boards that have not been dialogued with, because I know many were, but I don't know which ones. So we'll redo that. We'll let the employees speak as they choose to speak. We'll answer a couple of questions. I can tell you that 100% of the employees landed on step 1 through 6. Okay. No one is higher than a 6. The other thing I can tell you that the top step is at the 90th percentile. Now, not for every single job, because it's a target for the overall result. So what we want is that if an employee, years from now, through the merit system, ends up at that top step, 10, the theory is that that's somebody that we've kept a long time. They're very valuable. They've consistently done well year after year through merit, and they're now getting paid not the best for the target communities and probably not the second best.
Stop.
Oh, thanks.
You're gonna flip it.
Can you do this?
I hope so.
I told them we were going to rely on you, so if you can't,
Can you flip this one over, though?
I don't know if that one's.
I don't know.
We'll go with a newie. You want to mark that?
Yeah, thanks.
For,
so.
Boy, it's all
right, you
got to push a button.
Oh, we lost
Our secretary could deal
There we
with
go.
that.
Okay. So what I can tell the board is that the employee, after X number of years, a minimum of 4, and for some people it would be as long as 7 or 8, if they do consistently well with merit and they get to that highest step, they're not being paid the highest in the target area and probably not the second, but they'd be around the 3rd or the 4th highest out of the 15 towns we surveyed. That's the theory. And the idea is if this person has done that well in our system for many years, this is the person we want to hang on to. The idea is if we pay them at that 90th percentile, they won't leave. They'll essentially, we trap them with good pay. That's the whole idea. Other employees who don't perform, frankly, at that high level won't get to that point. And, average performance is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But what the system says is that you perform on average and you stay probably about where you are and you get your COLA every year, but you don't move up in the steps. So those answers we can give you because those were features of design. And Sandy and I weren't sure how much depth you wanted to get into, but one thing I will give the board, I have this chart that shows everybody where they fall, where they were, where they go, and it's confusing, and I apologize, but that's the way it is. But it's got names on it, so I'll take the names off because that's not fair to the people involved. But the positions will still be on here, so you'll be able
kind of know who it is.
Yeah, really.
In some cases, you'll know who it is, but that's the best I can do is to take the names off. But you'll see where everybody was and where they fell and what the pay adjustment is. Let me ask you, do you want this? Because I was really reluctant to hand it out because it's
I don't really care about the personality.
But if you want it, I'll give it to you.
It's not about the personality. If anybody wants to reach out to me, they can reach out to me.
Because I think it's better that this not be given out.
Right, no, I don't think the board is interested.
Okay, great.
It's not about I don't like you, or I love you. It's about, if you have a problem, I want to hear from you. That's because we represent.
And then if we need to see that because someone reached out to us, maybe we need to go
Have a
and
conversation.
have a conversation with you or just look at it, that's all.
Could I
So let me just go through the board one more time, then we'll come back to you. Linda, any questions?
No, but I'm just glad that we're not gonna vote on anything tonight. I think that, you need to.
I wanted to go with Gordon's suggestion that, we give the other boards the opportunity to get direct feedback from their department heads and make sure that they have the ability to comment, because I know we did get something back from the planning board. I haven't seen anything from any other elected board, so that was one thing. I am curious about the percentile and how, just, I guess, our average salary, I guess, where are we falling these days? Or is it really, do you look at the bottom of the range to see where that falls in the percentile as a starting point as opposed to the top? Do you ever look at that?
We look at the data in all different ways, and basically it comes down to the policy decision of the town manager of how he wants to have it structured.
What we
And I think he wants to do is have a very competitive pay plan where the average falls in the middle, but the 90th percentile is at the top, so that way those people who are very high performers have the opportunity to reach that 90th percentile.
What we tried was to create a system where steps 3, 4, 5, 6, the middle of the range, are about average for the target. Now, any specific position, we don't know.
So the top is not average.
But the whole plan in general, compared to those 15 towns, that's where steps 3, 4, 5, 6 are. Those are
Okay.
about the 50th percentile. And that's where everybody is now. So everybody is basically, nobody's above 6, so everybody's basically at average for the. So now for our workforce to move above average for the communities we surveyed, it's going to have to be on merit from here on out, except for the potential for that one-time 2.5 step if you choose to implement that way.
So in a given year, for example, with the 2.5% step in merit, it means that employees could get some range of 1 to 4. You just have to balance it within landing on whatever that dollar amount is for 2.5% for the entire employee base. Is that correct?
Say that again?
Okay. Say you've got 10 employees and 2.5% of their raises is $100,000. You can give people, those 10 employees, one can get 1%, one can get 5%, one could get 0%, as long as it comes within that $100,000.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the goal. Right. Yep.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Yep.
Jim?
When this study first came out a year or so ago, the question I had, just not to talk about specific employees, but the broad picture of the environment we're in, where the economy has been going down year after year for the last 3 or 4 years. When this study came out, or the idea to do this study, my thought process was it was good to understand where our employees sit with the rest. So I saw you looked at the demographics. You picked towns that were comparable, summarized, Foxborough, and you keep hearing it. It's a small town with city issues. So we found a percentage within there that you tried to match everybody in there, and you saw if they were a little above it or a little below it.
Yes.
People that were below it, we wanted to bring them up
Right.
to be comparable. The people that were above it, in your report, you called it a red line circle or a red circle, where they're not, for fairness, they're not penalized for making too much out of that, from that percentage, and they're not brought back down.
Right.
So I wouldn't imagine that there would be a savings. It's almost an artificial bump until that person either
I don't
leaves.
think anyone was red circled in Foxborough.
Yeah,
I
there
don't
were
think
no
we
red
had, there were no
circles.
red circles. Mostly it was green circles.
But the reason there were no red circles is because nobody going onto the new plan is above a 6. So by definition, nobody was put into a new grade where their current pay was above step 10, because that would have been a red circle. And we're a long ways from anything like that.
Okay. I don't want to be redundant, but I did get a fair amount of calls. Some of the people termed it that, we're balancing the budget on the backs of the employees. Other people thought some departments were getting a big bump and they were getting nothing. So the feedback was a little all over there. I think you had that meeting even before we got the report, so I had nothing to base this on, and I wasn't interested in looking individual people. But the process itself, where it's new, and I understand it's under the Strong Town Managers Act, you're doing something that really hasn't been done before. But from my understanding, it was presented to the people and saying we need to act quickly. It's got to go to one committee, then it's got to go to the Selectmen, and here's your options. I was not prepared to come close to approving this because I think there's a lot of anxiety out there still. Granted, there's some people that are going to probably not be happy and other people are going to be thrilled, and that dialogue needs to happen between you guys to the department heads and them, and hopefully that gets resolved. But in the future, when there's something this new to people's livelihoods, that's when our phones rings. And I'm surprised, I know people were asked to come here tonight to support it, which puts them in a precarious situation. The people here that probably don't want to support it, but they don't want to say anything. And such is public life. I mean, it's uncomfortable, but that's what we have to
There
do
it
at
is,
this
yeah.
table.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Jim, because
so in the
yeah.
future, another circle around before it gets here to try to work it out, so we're not embarrassing people, we're not putting them in uncomfortable situations, and we get the information. I know we asked for this information. You know, it has dragged. We asked for it last week, and we said we weren't going to get it till it was final. If this is the final and it's presented with so many uncertainties, I don't want to do this again.
This is, Sandy tells me, her final report. She will not be editing this. And again, it is the consultant's report.
Yeah, could I just say?
I just wanted to,
Sure.
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that about employees being here, because what I said the employees anticipating, the very question that Mark asked, was if employees didn't speak to you and say one way or the other, and, you know, I said, I'm not going to tell you what to say, but I'm going to tell you should say something, whether you like it or you don't. Because if you as a board don't hear from the people that are covered by this, that they support it or they think it's flawed, then it puts you in a heck of a position when I ask you to adopt it. You have the benefit with unions of knowing that when you're asked to adopt a union contract, they have ratified it. It does not come to you until they have voted to ratify it. So you know they support it. They may not like everything in it, but they've voted to support it, a majority.
Yeah, and Kevin, I'm not questioning that. What I'm questioning is we've got a May 7th, or when's the town election?
Yeah.
Town meeting.
Town meeting is May
Town
14th.
meeting. You've got employees that have been here for year after year after year, and this was not done year after year after year.
Right.
So to give this with a few weeks left, knowing it has to, you know, I don't think the advisory committee's looked at this. I couldn't figure out what this is going to cost the town in fiscal year 213, 214, 215. If you're saying it's $135,000, where does that fit into the budget? We haven't even got to that with the advisory committee. You know, that's a couple $1,000s per 65 employees.
Yes.
To come in and I think this is the last minute, and probably no fault of yours because your contract was what it was. But as a board in a process to bring this so close to the end and saying do or die, and that's what we're struggling with. And I'm biting my tongue on a lot of stuff just so it's not embarrassing anybody. I don't want to be put through this again.
Kind of a chicken or an egg problem, Jim. You know, there's just so many things we can get done in a given volume of time, and this is when it got done. And I've got other things that are coming at you very fast and furious, too.
Understood. But this is very personal to people's savings, livelihoods, town budget. There's very few things that influence an employee other than their salary to this extent, this quick. That's all I'm saying.
And Jim, wasn't this going to be discussed at the December town meeting? At one point, we were pushing for the December, and now we're at May.
Could I just interrupt and talk for a minute since I'm the consultant?
As the chairman, I'll recognize you in a minute, okay?
Okay.
These folks have been waiting. I want to let them, and then we're going to come back to you, okay?
But there's a lot of things that I can clarify.
Well, let's just get the rest of the questions, then you can clarify them.
What I want to say is, we did a wage study 5 years ago, okay? We went through the same exact thing. There were some of us that were unhappy with our grades. There were some of us that weren't. I personally got a 2-cent raise last time, and I'm one of the 23 that is not going to get my step this year. But for the next 10 years, I have the opportunity for steps. But we went through this 5 years ago. Some of us were unhappy, some of us weren't. It's just the effect of the study. If we all complain or we all are happy, then there's no issue. But it doesn't work that way. It didn't work that way 5 years ago. It's not working that way this time. But for the good of all of us, for the next 10 years, we got steps. Some of us were on step 6, and we weren't going to get anything. You don't give a COLA, they get nothing if they're out of steps. So we have to remember, most of us went through this 5 years ago, and most of us some of us had the same issue. So it's nothing new for us that we've gone through this. You know, but we have to think big picture. You know, give up something now for the future. And that's what I'm doing. That's why I voted without the option, because we need to look at long range for the best of all of us.
And Lisa, I understand that, but, and you said it very eloquently, and I understand it, but for what you're saying, there's 5 people saying they disagree with you. That's all I'm saying. It's coming at the last minute, and from the private sector, it's not that easy. We don't get steps. You know, the private sector doesn't get the opportunity to budget every year because it's been going down. When times are good, it's way up here. So I'm trying to figure it out, listening to the people that it was presented to. If they can't figure it out, and they're telling us their problems, something's missing, either at the department level, the department head level, the town manager. That's all I'm saying. And we've got a few weeks to figure it out. It's too late to do it comfortably. And now it's going to have to go through very painfully with the advisory committee and us, because we can't vote on it tonight. And we've got 2 more meetings left.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. I may agree with you or not, but from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of employees that disagree with her or are not on the same page.
But then I guess we should go to our department heads first and follow the chain, and then our department heads should speak to, I mean, you guys, you're
Right.
the board, I mean.
I don't know. There's a reason
you
that
know,
they're calling us. I don't know what that reason is.
You know, there's the personnel, I thought Board of Selectmen don't make personnel decisions, so that's why I don't call you, because I can't, you know.
But I guess what I'm saying is when people are calling me with steps and numbers,
Right.
I don't want to see that list. It's not my job. So the fact that they're calling us with concerns and questions, something's broken. And to try to figure it out at this table is not the right place to do it. That's all I'm saying.
And my point, Jim, was, you know, we were going to review this in December. It's now May, and we're just getting it. So we've been very frustrated it's taken this long. But let's hear from the other employee, and then we're going to come right back to you.
Mine's just a comment, not a question.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank Kevin, no matter how this comes out, whether it stays where it is or we move on to this. I just want to thank Kevin and Cindy and Sandy and Randy and Lisa, you know, for all their efforts put into this. You know, coming from where I am, we haven't done this in the last few years. We did it once since I've been here, and it's almost 8 years that I've been here. And I appreciate that it's being looked at again.
Good, thank you. Okay, Sandy, you wanted to make some comments?
Yeah, just very quickly, because I have to get going. But what I'd like to tell you is that this study was done the same way that it's been done in hundreds of other places, with a very solid methodology, okay, that has been tested and used in many communities. So the methodology and the process is not flawed at all. Number 2, you're never going to make everybody happy in these studies. You're never going to make everybody happy. Even when you make everybody happy, you're still not going to make them happy, because 10 weeks later they'll forget about it and they'll be unhappy again.
We couldn't make the town manager
All
happy
right,
when we
you're never
hired him.
going to make them happy. So what I have to say is, what my experience has been with these studies is a third are going to be very unhappy, a third are going to be ecstatic, and then the other third falls right in the middle, okay? And with regard to the lateness of this, I apologize to the board and to the town completely. Kevin can verify this. I had a horrible tragedy in my family. My father died, okay? And it took months for me to catch up. And Kevin was such a gentleman, and he came to my father's funeral, and I really respect him for that. The employees of this town are very good. This is a good plan for them. I would urge you to keep the politics out of it and to keep it a professional process. You have a professional town manager with a professional town, and I would go forward professionally. You're not going to be able to make people happy. A lot of times what employees do is they try to get as much as they can get, and they say, gee, you know, I've been here 10 years, I should have a couple of more steps, or, you know, my friend, you know, she works really hard. You wanted an objective study. This is my recommendation. We did our due diligence. We did our analysis. This is my recommendation. It is proposed. You can adopt it 100%, you can adopt it 80%, you can adopt it 70%, but I am not going to be swayed or influenced to change it, because it is a solid report, okay? Thank you very much. I have to go. I have to drive all the way back to Boston.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
I'm sorry, Leo, you had another comment, and we're going to move on to the next item. You want to come to the microphone, though?
Again, Leo Potter, 2 things. One, on the job descriptions that were prepared, no one has seen them to see if they're appropriate or not. 2, on the question of the 2.5%, do I understand that a department has got a lot of money that's 2.5% gets allocated however they want, or is it just 2% per person? I got a confusing answer with the question I got on that, the 2.5%.
There are 23 people scattered throughout all the departments.
I mean, after you get to a step, the next year you get reviewed.
Talking about a merit increase.
The merit increase.
Oh,
is
yes.
the merit increase strictly the 2.5%, or is it a pool of money that's subdivided as somebody sees fit?
No. The merit increase is a product of the merit system, which is individually determined for each employee. It's not a pool of money that we say, here's how much we're going to do for merit this year. The number is unknown until the reviews are done.
That's not
But I
what
mean,
he
it's
said
not
to you.
it's not a 2.5%. In other words, it's some
There you go.
Merit,
some portion of 2.5%.
no. Movement along the step scale from one step to another step is a 2.5% increment.
Okay.
To get that 2.5% increment, the employee has to have a successful merit evaluation.
I understand that, but is it that amount, or is it some? It's going to be 1%.
No, it's either a step or not.
Okay, that's what
Gotcha.
was unclear when Lorraine got her answer there
Okay.
in regards to the pool. I just want
Sure.
to clarify that because I think some people might have missed that one.
But, Leo, let me just clarify one thing for you. So let's say that we're a year from today, and we're looking at the budget. And let's just say, for instance, that between the COLA adjustment that's being proposed and 27 people moving up a step, when you add all that up, in the budget report, it says we need $125,000. If the town can only afford $100,000, then you're going to have to eliminate someone in order to promote someone, or you're going to have to, because if you do the evaluations first and you say, you know, you're now entitled to a step increase, and if when you add up all the dollars for the step increases in the COLA, if there's not enough money in the budget to make that happen, then the town manager's got to find a different way of funding that increase, because ultimately town meeting may say, no,
Right.
we don't have that, and then you got to work your way backwards again.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
You're right.
Yep.
You're right, Larry. What you typically do for these systems is you establish an amount of money that you think will be sufficient based on past years, with the realization that you're never going to hit it exactly, because at the time you're funding it in May, you haven't done the reviews until 2 months later. So it's always a little bit of an adjustment, yeah.
Okay, so, all right, we'll take one last question. Go ahead.
I had a comment and not a question, and that was that about a year ago, I appeared in front of this board and with the discussion of fair pay for fair work. And I'm happy to be here today, not knowing exactly where I fall as far as step, but seeing that the grade that was really inappropriate for my position has at least been put, I believe, on the correct grade. So I'm pleased that the professional who was here, I think, did a thorough and very analytical job of looking at it, taking my input. I haven't seen my job description back. I don't know exactly where my pay is, but I believe that a fair process was followed. I didn't get looped back with feedback, and I'm not speaking for anyone else. I'm speaking for myself and my position in the interview that I had and my opportunity to say, here are the things that my position now does that it didn't do 20 years ago or 10 years ago, whenever it was last looked at. I feel like my position has been evaluated, and I had a chance to give input. Whether everything I gave was taken and put into that, that dream sheet or not, I don't know. But I feel like I at least had a chance for input and a professional to compare it against other communities in the same position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What I'd like to suggest to the board is the town meeting warrant. We have the town meeting warrant and the discussion on the budget. The town meeting warrant needs to get printed, so it's important that tonight we go through and decide what's in and what's out. So I'd like to do that next, then we come back to, if you recall, the discussion we had at the AdCom dealt with terminology. So in some areas, you hear we have a $400,000 surplus in town. And what should we do with it? Well, that starts with the assumption that you're raising taxes 2.5%. If you don't start with that assumption, you got a deficit, not a surplus. So the discussion at the AdCom was what was the board's position on whether or not you would raise taxes? Would you raise it just enough to cover what's in the budget? Would you raise it to 2.5? If you raised it to 2.5, what would you do with that extra 400,000? I don't think it's because of the lateness of the hour. I think it's more important, unless you disagree, Kevin, to get through the warrant so that you can get that printed. So
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chairman, the board needs to go through the warrant and decide if any of these articles are out. I think it's easier, rather than vote them in, is just simply go through them, because I suspect that's probably only going to be one controversial article in here. The rest are probably all in. And it just might make your life a little simpler to do it that way. The second thing is, I need to know tonight what your decision is on the budget. You don't need to decide what to do with the 440,000 tax revenue that I propose we not raise. You don't have to make any decisions on that tonight, but there is a column in the warrant. I have given you a proposed budget, and I've adjusted that. And there's a column in the warrant that that we have to fill in all those numbers, and I have to know what you want filled in there.
Right.
It can be the town manager's proposed budget, it can be a different budget, it can be the proposed budget with some changes, it can be zeros to be, to be announced at town meeting. But whatever it is you want, you need to tell me that, so, because this has to get into the printer in the next week or so.
Right. Okay.
So I understand, if anybody has a problem with one article, bring it up.
We're just going to go through them real quick.
All right.
All right? So Article 1, annual town elections. I presume there's no issues with that?
Can't.
Article number 2, town reports, no issues?
Can't.
Article number 3, reports of committees, no issues?
Nope.
Article number 4 is
That's
the
the budget.
operating budget. So of course, we'll put that,
Hold.
we'll put that in there, although we'll agree on an amount in a little bit. Okay? We then have, after that, Article 5, which is the CIP budget. Obviously, that will stay in there. Article 6 is land taking, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners to acquire by purchase, gift, or eminent domain 2 parcels of land in fee containing approximately 2.1 acres as shown on the access easement area. This is relative to what we talked about this evening, the Patriot, let me get it right now. The
Group.
FXP group, okay? So I'll open that up for discussion from the board.
I'll make a motion right away to not have this go to town meeting, to take this off the warrant for this, at this time.
There's a motion by Linda, is there a second? I'll second it as chair. Okay, discussion?
Discussion, I just don't think that we're ready for this yet, and, we don't know enough about it. The lawyers haven't, talked about other things that they need to talk about, and again, I'm not gonna throw something down this town's throat. No way, I'm not pushing for it. So, you know where I'm gonna stand on it. I just like it out.
Okay, Jim?
Under discussion, and I apologize, it was an hour and a half away. I missed the discussion earlier, and I don't know what you guys had discussed. But I do know I got a packet, and it's a lawsuit, and I'm hesitant to talk about this at all. So it puts me in a disadvantage, because if I say yes, or if I say no, or if I abstain, I know Mr. Durensis is here. If he can give me maybe someone can give me a executive session summary of what happened this afternoon. But until I look at that lawsuit against me or the town, has it been lifted or if it's still there, I don't want to say a word about this at all. I don't think I should.
Well, you've got to decide if it's in or out.
Yeah.
So you don't have to say anything, but you do have to make a vote whether it's in or out.
I don't know if I have to do that. Can I ask the
Sure.
council to advise me on that?
Sure.
I've been looking for authority to try and settle the lawsuit, and as part of the settlement, in a discussion I've had earlier today, I think I can resolve the property issues.
What does that mean, Mr. Durensis? You think you can resolve?
You don't think we need this?
I think it would facilitate the negotiations if you took no action on this at this point in time. Let me have an opportunity. You had indicated, the chair had indicated 2 days. Give me a couple of days and see if I can't bring FXP
P.
And the town of Foxborough back into better working relationships. And at this point, if you include this article, this is a matter of great antagonism to them. The original intent behind this article arose because they made some claims that we don't own what we needed to own for the billboards. And I've asked them, tell me what it is that you had there, what's your basis for this claim? And they've repeated it in a lawsuit. I'd like to sit down with them, find out what the claims were. The point of the article was to take by eminent domain whatever those defects were in whatever was done 10 years ago to acquire our property, bring us back to where we thought we were going to be. I don't think the article is going to be necessary. I think we can resolve this if you give me a chance to do so, and therefore I would say do not go forward with this at this time.
It's something we need tomorrow anyway, so, right?
So you're recommending a no action? Would that give the town?
Not no action, take it off, right?
Well, no, well, my question is,
One at a
if
time,
there's three options. Vote to move it forward, vote to take it off, or vote no action to give you a little time to work it out. If we take it off, maybe that gives up some of our negotiating. Maybe it's a bad thing because it antagonates more. I don't know. That's what I'm asking you from your legal perspective and the work that you're doing as of today, as of yesterday, as up until this time.
I would say, if you authorize me to speak and negotiate with the craft organization, and I guess you haven't all decided that.
I don't think it's our decision.
If you do.
1 second now.
I would not want to have this as an impediment to those discussions.
If Chair, if I may, James, you weren't
You're
here.
gonna, when you say, Mr. Chair, if I may, would you like me to respond, or you
Yeah.
just?
Very important that James know that the attorneys asked if one of the board members could be part of those meetings with the chief, Mr. Durancis, and I don't think he had that bit of information, which it makes it a lot different. So I think it's important that you know that before you vote on anything.
All right, Mr. Town Manager.
Let me make a suggestion to the board that I think you'll find very helpful. What I think I hear counsel saying, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, is that if the board makes a gesture of conciliation
Correct.
by removing this article, then perhaps it will result in good things happening through your efforts.
Correct.
I will report to the board that I think there is no jeopardy on the town in taking that action, because at any time, if you decide that circumstances warrant it, you can call a special, put this article on, and within 30 days affect this vote. And so, then one other thing I want the board to be aware of, I cannot speak for the Water Sewer Commission. They requested this article. I can tell you that I spoke to the chairman earlier tonight. I will go somewhat out on a limb here. And I will say to you that I think it is a fair representation of what the chairman of the Water Sewer Commission told to me, that there would not be great angst or consternation on the part of the Water Sewer Commission if this were all to be worked out and this were to be unnecessary. I think everyone would be, shall I say, overjoyed.
All right, so if there's no further question, no further comments, I'd like to call the question so we can keep moving. And the motion on the table was to exclude Article 6 from the town warrant. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. The next article, and I won't use the numbers anymore because this would become 6 instead of 7, but is the personnel bylaw.
This is the
study we
article
just,
for the study.
That's correct.
Again, I don't think we're ready for this.
The next four.
So, excuse me, the finance director made a comment.
Yes, the article is just to vote for the funding for whichever plan, the board supports. So if you.
This is one that we do every year anyways, right?
Right.
Right, but it's nuanced here. You're just voting for the funding, whatever funding that may be.
Right, and it's what we
It's
do.
the next 5 are the
Same
same
thing with
thing.
the HR.
One's non-union and the other 4 are the unions.
You made a different decision on
Yeah.
how you would fund that. So it handles it.
Right. So is there any comments on 7? 8,
Annual
9,
routine article.
10, 11, 12,
Annual routine article for the revolving funds.
13, revolving funds. 14, fund qualified OPEB trust. 15, fund stabilization. 16, reduce borrowing for Boyden Library project.
This is the one that would be needed, depending upon what decision you make on the money that we're recommending not be taxed. You can take that into different, you can give that, if you decide you want to give that back to the taxpayers, you can do it a few different ways.
Right.
One of the ways is to reduce the amount that we would otherwise raise for exempt debt. This would facilitate that. So
Didn't you also say you had 2 accounts that had some excess money that you would?
That's the next article. So you could leave these in, and if you decided to provide tax relief, if that was your pleasure, you could vote you could recommend no action on this account.
You
It
wanna
just gives
do
you
it.
the option to provide relief.
But if you take this
Leave
out,
them
you
in there
won't be
for right
able
now.
to have
But on
this off.
17, there's excess money that you want to apply, and this applies that. But there's not excess money in capital for the library project.
Correct, that would have to come from the excess, if you
Right.
will, from it.
Okay. 18, highway funds. Any comments on that? 9, leasing of town property for the landfill site.
That's for the solar project.
Okay. Grant of conservation restriction on town property.
Same thing.
Next one is public way discontinuance. Any comments on that?
This is an article, I assume you were given a presentation while I was away on military duty on this, because I don't frankly know a lot about it. It's,
We were given a plan. It's the intersection of Oak and
Right.
I'm told that all the boards
Yeah.
concerned
Right.
are proponents.
Yeah. Okay, Oak Street easement.
This part of the same
Right.
one.
Next one is the stretch energy code bylaw.
This is the new building code,
yay.
consistent with the, we're trying to make ourselves a green community and score a $180,000, $190,000 grant for energy conservation, and this is one of the required steps.
Okay. The next one is acceptance of Chapter 137 of the Acts of 2003, an act relative to public employees serving the armed forces of the United States of America.
Did you get an explanation of what this is?
When you were on, yep, when you were gone. Well, you were away doing your military
Well,
duty.
I was
They gave us
away,
that.
Yeah.
The next one is the parking bylaw. And this is the one we've been talking about, dealing with the issues on North Street.
Correct.
Any comments?
Just,
Okay.
it's gone through council, correct?
You've actually already voted to put this in. You
Yes, I did.
specifically voted to put this in.
But I thought that council hadn't looked at it.
Has, Paul, have you seen the warrant, by the way, and have you commented on the articles in the warrant? I know you have on the police article we're gonna talk about in a minute, but,
On this one, the original draft singled out one particular business organization in town. And so I submitted a revision that took that reference to that one particular business organization. Again, because we need to work better
right,
with.
And that change has been incorporated.
it's been included,
So
okay.
that's been included.
Okay.
Thanks.
Then we have amending zoning bylaws. Amending zoning bylaws.
It's mostly.
Planning board,
Right.
planning board, planning board.
That is all of them.
So you've taken out the police article?
Yes, because council had advised that it needed some
Right.
changes and there was no time to do it, so I circled back with the police chief and I said, look, you know, people get impatient at town meeting with making amendments on the floor. We don't have the final changes. And he, oh, well, he's here. So,
Yeah.
You're in agreement, Ed?
After reviewing emails from town council and discussion with Herman, I advised her to pull that particular article.
Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks,
chief.
chief.
All right, discussion of the fiscal year 2013 budget.
I thought we were gonna put that off.
Yeah, I think we should put
It's
that.
getting late. right?
Okay. I'm happy.
But
Did
I
you
do
say you
move-
needed it printed?
I do move
Yeah,
that
you need to
we-
tell, if you don't tell me tonight, your column's gonna be blank
For what?
for the budget.
In the warrant.
Because it's gotta go to the printer, and I don't know what to put in your column.
So what we talked about at the AdCom is
So we're
whether,
just approving our budget under that.
And the selectmen recommendation.
Selectmen.
Does town manager recommend, and you have your column, be the same or different?
Well, we already had this discussion with AdCom. The only thing we
Yeah.
will discuss is the $403,000.
Right, which,
Which is.
Not
that-
here.
That is not,
It's not there.
needed for appropriation to support this budget.
Yeah, that's not part of, necessarily, part of the budget. I mean, you could theoretically,
Argue all night about how we
Yeah.
want to use it.
we can't.
well, you could, there were lots of suggestions about ways to use that money for very valid purposes. That doesn't happen to be something I'm recommending to you, but that doesn't mean that there weren't lots of good ideas that night.
Right.
So you might decide you want to put something in this budget that's not presently in it. And so the only thing you'd need to do at that 430 is if you wanted to use some of it, because remember, you can't amend this up.
right.
You can amend it down, but once it's printed on the warrant, you can't go up. That's
The
that court
requested
case.
column that can't go up, so we'd have to amend the requested column
Right.
as well.
So from my personal perspective, I think that we should be trying to minimize the taxes, and we shouldn't be looking for ways to raise it up to 2.5% and then figure out how to spend the extra 400,000. I think it's important enough that we not go over what is in the number. It's just one person's view. Others, what do you want to do? Lorraine?
I had a question. The positions that were discussed with AdCom last time, then, are those positions in this current budget, the
New police officer,
new DPW?
the new DPW laborer, and the budget analyst in the finance office, those three positions are in the recommended
Okay,
budget.
I just wanted to make sure those were in.
And on the school
math-
side,
Math
when it- right.
specialist, okay.
And the math specialist in the school
Right,
department.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my only question.
Are there any comments?
Just a question. So, we could, if we do the library and take less of a loan, that will affect the taxpayers. It will,
Yes.
right?
Over
So
the
that-
span of
Over
of
20
you'd
years.
save the 410,000 plus approximately 130,000 in interest that we would pay as well, over the 20 years.
And that will, obviously, that'll be
There's
less
a separate
taxes.
article for that.
My
But-
suggestion,
but is that part of the,
no, you don't have, that's not part of the budget article. The
So we
only
can-
reason you would need to make a decision tonight on the 440 surplus, or whatever you want to call it, is if you wanted to spend some of it in the budget. Otherwise, you don't have any decision
what
you
you
need
were
to make on that
And I'm
tonight.
saying, I personally don't want to add any more to
No.
the budget.
No,
right?
Period. End of story.
Yeah.
But
I'm good.
But it's a discussion that's separate. from
But if we
that.
decide later on that you want to defer, reduce the borrowing, there's an article on the warrant that would allow us to do that. We don't have to
which
decide
would-
that tonight.
Which would
Right.
affect, okay,
Right.
right, all right.
And we'd like to
Then
come
I'm
back to you on another night and give you some math to say, here's what it would save the taxpayer on average if you do it by reducing debt. Here's what it would save if you did it in a one-year lump sum.
Yeah.
And any other ideas that anybody has, we'd like to give you those numbers. So we
So is
don't
there
have those
a
tonight.
motion to approve the budget as submitted by the town manager?
moved.
There's a motion and a second.
Yep.
For the tape recorder, the motion was made by Lorraine and seconded by Linda. Any discussion?
Just for the record, it's 59,226,350 is
Okay.
what the town manager's recommendation is.
Okay.
209 to 59, 219.
Through 59,226,350. That's what my sheet shows. No? Total of all operating budgets for 2000
Isn't it?
fiscal year 13 requested.
Did you get a different number?
Yeah, 59.
Well, that ain't good.
226, 350.
Well,
We're using the
if you-
number in the warrant.
If you vote the town manager's recommended
Actually, I'm
budget,
sorry.
we'll sort out that little difference in the morning and figure out.
There was one adjustment because when the Southeastern Regional,
Oh, yeah.
when Mark Morris came in to AdCom, he gave us a number that was approximately 7,000 less for the assessment.
So what is the real number?
It's 59,219,916, and the line item that's adjusted is Department 390, Southeastern Regional. which that number now is 288,566.
Okay.
So that was the last change
Okay.
that happened. So now the amount that's available within the 2.5% levy instead of 403,000 is now 410,000.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that we accept the warrant
Article 5, Captain.
with the exception of the land taken article, whichever number that would,
6.
well, yeah, it's 6, but
It's going to change when you renumber them, so.
At present time.
Second.
We do need one other vote from the board, and that is on the capital budget. If you feel comfortable with concurring with the committee's recommendation tonight, we'd love to have a vote that we can print in the warrant. If you're not comfortable with it, you can make that on the floor of town meeting, and we can present something to you later.
Let's do Linda's
but Jim
motion.
and I and Randy are all on the capital budget committee. I don't know if the AdCom person is here. No, that's John. But we can certainly give you any information you want, but I don't want to have you tie up for an hour if you want to go into it in depth.
So let's deal with the
no,
motion.
we can't really do mine because that's part of the warrant. So I'm doing the warrant as a whole, with the exception of that one, so I guess we need to.
Well, you're voting for inclusion of all the articles except that one.
Yes, but we want to make sure that
We can do a separate vote on whether we endorse the capital plan or
Okay.
not. But your plan would still be.
All right.
So you've made the motion.
Yep.
Lorraine, did you second it?
Yes.
You did, okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now, on.
That's to include all articles in the current draft except the eminent domain article.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Now, Jim, do you want to give a 60-second update on the capital plan and see if the board's willing to approve it?
I will give my 60 seconds up to Randy, only because it was Saturday morning. My head's still spinning from getting here, so.
You did give us an update, though.
I
and thank
emailed
you
everybody
for
after
that.
the meeting,
Yes.
so you had all the data.
Yep.
The capital budget represents approximately $3.2 million in capital for several items, including $50,000 for software upgrades for all administrative municipal departments, $58,500 for vehicles for the police department, $1 million in items, 4 items in the fire department, refurbishment of the ladder truck, which should get us 8 to 10 years, a replacement of engine 21, the contained breathing apparatus replacements were at the end of life at 15 years, as well as the replacement of Squad 1. 4 items within the highway department, various equipment, just the acceptance of the Chapter 90 state allocation based on the number this year's number, but it'll be different when we finally get the number from Mass Department of Transportation. That's why you have a specific article to accept other highway funds. There's $148,000 in additional roads money, $100,000 being funded from meals tax, $48,000 remainder from that Mill Street vote that you'll recall that came from meals tax, but there was a remainder when the final bills were paid, and because it was specifically voted for Mill Street, it was appropriate to bring it back and then to allocate it in general for roads, just to be consistent with intent. So in essence, about $750,000 for roads, and if meals tax receipts come in better, you can always appropriate more later in the year, but the committee didn't want to overcommit. The Board of Health needs a replacement vehicle for the department at $25,000. The school department had various capital items consistent with their capital plan, about $453,000 from school bus replacements, computers and copiers and the like. Water Enterprise had various infrastructure capital projects this year consistent with prior year, $460,000, and the Sewer Enterprise needs to appropriate their annual assessment for the current upgrades to the current plant over in Mansfield, $220,000. So again, about $3.2 million in capital. There's one nuance I think it's just important for the board to understand. I know Jim and Kevin understand it. The
million in capital for the fire department. As you recall, the intent, given the increased revenue source that we're getting there because of the higher rates, the intent is that all of that capital be funded from ambulance receipts and not out of the other funding sources that we traditionally bring to bear, like free cash, et cetera. So the fire department has a need to address these 4 major capital items, but they don't have all the funding in the account at town meeting. The ambulance receipts is a reserved account, and you actually need the funds in the account to appropriate by the day of town meeting. So they'll have a substantial amount of this in the account at that point in time, but there's $361,000 that they won't have in the account, but they'll actually have it within 3 to 4 months afterwards. So if you notice in the article, if you got it, there's a use of free cash that's called a term free cash loan. And the intent of that is truly just to be a loan. The intent is not to spend the free cash. It's to ultimately use the ambulance receipts when they come in a few months later at the next special, revote ambulance receipts as the funding source, and the free cash drops out. And the free cash will actually never be spent because that funding is associated with the replacement of Engine 21, which has a 10-month lead time. So by the time the bidding is completed and the vehicle is ready for delivery in March of April of 2013, that's the only point we can actually make a payment. You can't pay in advance. So by that time, we would have likely have had a special, and we would have changed the funding source. So it's a loan that enables us to sign a contract, because without the funding appropriate, you can't sign a contract. So I just wanted the board to understand that nuance with free cash.
What are we getting from the fire department on that?
Okay, is there a motion to support the capital plan?
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Randy.
Okay, and the next item is executive session. There are...
Well, we have action.
Oh, that's right, we got action, I'm sorry.
I got something to say too, Kevin.
Okay.
So let me do the action items quick.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay?
and then we gotta talk
Okay.
about something.
Let's hold off on the minutes with Pauline not being here. There's a
Yep.
couple of changes that have to be made. We can do that next meeting.
Yep.
There's a request to acceptance of service incentive grant of $2,000 from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs to be used to fund a temporary position to help develop an emergency preparedness outreach effort for the Foxborough community.
So moved.
With gratitude.
There's a motion to accept the grant and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries 5-0.
Larry, is it important to state who made the motions because of the recorder?
Oh,
The motion was made by Mark and seconded by Linda.
Thank you.
Renewal appointment of Randy Scollins and Bill Yukna to a 5-year term expiring on April 1st, 2017 to the Industrial Development Finance Authority.
So moved.
Motion by Mark,
Second.
second by Lorraine. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5-0. Appointment of Rafaela Feinstein to the Board of Registrars for the term ending 4/4/15.
So moved.
Motion by Mark,
second.
second by Linda. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We have a resignation of Pete Turner from the Building Committee.
I move that we accept the retirement of Pete. He's done a great job all those years, and with gratitude, we accept his resignation.
Second.
There's a motion by Linda, second by Lorraine, to accept the retirement of Pete Turner. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. There's a request to appoint Gary Whitehouse to a 3-year term on the Building Committee expiring 5/1/2015.
That comes from the committee itself, by the way, the chairman.
There's a motion by Lorraine,
Second.
second by Linda. Discussion?
Just want to mention, I think this is like the 59th committee he's on. So.
Yep.
Just showing your age.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There's a request for a Class 1 auto license for C&E Automotive doing business as C&E Yamaha to be located at 53 Washington Street.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Mark, a second by Lorraine. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. There's a request, Harvard Pilgrim, finish at the 50, a 10K run walk to be held on July 3rd, 2012.
So moved.
There's
We got a message from the chief.
From the chief, and the chief's here with his hand raised, so I'm going to let the chief.
Did this last year,
Just
right?
an explanation, the promoter was here earlier in the evening, and when he saw
The crowd.
the dynamic, I told him that I am in support of the race and the event that they planned, even though it's going to be on July 3rd, which is a Tuesday evening. It's going to present more of a challenge, and I just wanted to make the board aware that there might be more complaints as a result of it because of street closings.
Well, we're not used to getting complaints, chief, so that'll be.
No, you're gonna bring this all on to us? Wow.
So is there a motion to support the run walk to be held on July 3rd?
Motion.
Yes.
There's a motion by Mark, a second by Linda.
Yeah.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Chief.
There's an invitation by Eagle Scout Court of Honor for George Kliplinski for April 14th, 2012.
I'll be attending.
Lorraine will attend, okay. Excellent. There's a review of upcoming committee appointments for possible scheduling of interviews with the Board of Selectmen.
This is just an advisory to you to let you know that this is coming, everything is coming like a freight train in the next month. Unfortunately, it's the way it is every year. So we just wanted you folks to be aware. If we've done different things in past years in terms of interviews, not interviews, so if you're not going to do interviews, no problem. If you do want to do them, my suggestion is circle the positions, the people, whatever, turn them in to Sandy, and then we can get them scheduled.
Okay. I'll ask each person to do that directly with Sandy.
Larry, if I may.
Yes, sir. Well, we have one more item. Can I get through this last item? It's just, I think it's just for notification. Public hearing for a special permit for an accessory apartment at 7 Shoreline Drive?
Yep.
That's just informational purposes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should have been on the other.
Right, that's it for action items, right?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Before anybody makes a motion to go in executive session, I'd like to advise the board that I don't think it's a good idea without Pauline here. I'm not.
Yeah, can I say something that's to the same theme? I think given, and I've been trying to get Paul, but he's been interviewing, so if you give me a minute, I want to check with him. But I think given what's happened earlier, you don't need the executive session now.
For either of them?
For the real estate, for the real property negotiations, and the labor, it just was an update, and given the hour, I can come back to you. I will tell you, it's a grievance. You are step 2 in the grievance procedure. Sorry, I hate to do that to you.
I know.
But you are the step, and so you're going to have to hear the grievance. So we're going to have to do that, and it's probably going to be time-consuming.
Yeah, but my point is.
But you're not going to do that tonight. That was just to advise you.
All right.
Okay.
So he's suggesting not to do executive.
I'm suggesting no executive session.
All right, now, I'd
But-
like to,
But I want to ask Paul to be sure that there isn't something he wants to tell you.
that's fine, okay. What's he doing, another interview?
We'll go break him away from that, tell him.
Mr. Chairman, while Kevin's stepping out, there's one item, I sent you a quick note. When I was driving in here, it was brought to my attention, and before the meeting closes, that person came back, and maybe we could recognize that person
Absolutely.
to come and speak.
Who was it that wanted to speak? Sure, go ahead.
My name is Larry Thomas, 6 Norton Street. I'm also Vice Chairman of the Advisory Committee. And I got here about 5 of 7 tonight, and there were a number of people, including myself, who were out in the hall, and we were denied access to the meeting. And I can't think of anything more unthinkable than citizens showing up to an open meeting and being denied access to the meeting. I mean, it was my understanding that if that ever happens, that if the room reaches capacity, at that moment, you must adjourn the meeting and either move to a larger facility or convene at some other time when you can accommodate the people that are there.
Right. We had the enforcement officer here who had continually talked to myself, indicating that we were okay. We asked people to leave if they were here for a later article and they wanted to step out, because we would have to shut the meeting down if that was the case. A number of people left. We had the police chief, the fire chief, and I was not told by the enforcement officer at any time that anyone was prohibited from entering the room. And in fact, he continually told me that we were okay.
So I specifically told the enforcement officer, who's only doing his job, right? I notified the police chief, and I think your executive secretary, as they came in, that this is a clear violation of the open meeting law.
None of them related it to the chairman, Larry. So we made the announcement very quickly at 7 o'clock.
You know, at least once tonight, when people came into the room for the employees, you actually counted people coming in.
We counted all evening, Larry. Mark was counting, Linda was counting.
I know, so how is it that at the beginning of the meeting, when it was clearly jammed in here, you never thought to look at all the people standing in the hall?
No, we did,
I don't understand.
Larry, we did think to look.
We
The
did,
enforcement
and
officer,
people
the police chief and the fire chief indicated they were going to allow a higher than capacity in the room because we had that door open for emergency purposes. We had the police chief and the fire chief here, so they allowed us to go over the legal limit. I spoke to them at several times. At one point, Linda handed me a note.
Nobody told anyone on the board that there were people waiting in the hall to get into this meeting.
At one point, I went out to speak to the officer in charge.
As I said to
no
Larry.
one mentioned that.
No one
they were
told me
being
that anyone was
illegal
denied
meeting.
access.
No.
Nobody told me that anyone was denied access. We would have, if we knew that someone was denied access, we would have closed the meeting
We
immediately.
openly brought it up more than once before the meeting started and asked if there
Well,
was.
when you're in the hall, you can't hear that, right?
Well, you-
I mean,
well-
that's a problem.
But we spoke to the police chief, the fire chief, and the enforcement officer. And, you know, I'm running a meeting in here. I can't see who's out in the hallway. I have to rely on them. At one point, Linda handed me a
Told
note.
them that if we went over the capacity, they should let you know and the meeting would come to a halt.
No, what I said to them was if.
That's what I told them.
What I said to them, Larry, was that if they believe the room exceeds capacity and we need to shut the meeting down, to notify me immediately and we'll shut the meeting down.
do that.
They did not do that. And at one point, if you watch the tape, Linda handed me a note. I stepped out, asked Mark to run the meeting for a few minutes, and I went around the corner and I spoke to the enforcement officer, and he said, I just took a count, you're okay, don't worry about it. So I apologize to you.
Do you find this as disturbing as I do? That
And I apologize.
citizens show up, particularly something as important as tonight's meeting, right?
Correct.
I mean, this is probably the most contentious
Yes,
issue we've
yes.
ever had in town, and people are denied access to an open meeting.
No,
in
that
which
shouldn't,
it's
that should
discussed.
not have happened.
So,
That should not have
Larry,
happened.
you were in the hall and you said you wanted to come in and they said you couldn't.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, we'll talk to the enforcement officer tomorrow because we had the police chief.
It wasn't just me either. It was a number of people said they wanted to come in.
Yeah, well, you.
And during that time, at least one news photographer came into the room. You know, that's another thing, when you have citizens waiting out there and the room is filled with news people.
I think we could only apologize. I didn't know. Nobody told me either.
Nobody told the town manager, no one told myself. We discussed it, Larry, before the meeting started. We talked about it during the meeting. Mark was keeping count, Linda was keeping count. At one point, Linda asked me to go out and speak to the enforcement officer, and I did. And never did they tell us that they were prohibiting people from entering the room. If they had, we would have done what we said before the meeting started, and that is we would shut the meeting down and reschedule it for a different day. So, we'll ask the town manager to look into it and talk to the police chief, the fire chief, and the enforcement officer and have a report for us at the next meeting.
People need to understand how serious that is.
I think the board does.
Oh, yeah.
Very clearly. And I think the town manager does.
We knew and we were prepared. We had talked about it this afternoon about
Right.
potentially having to shut the meeting down if we had a big enough crowd. So it was teed up and, you know, we knew there might be a problem. And we were waiting to hear if it was, and word never arrived, so we just assumed we're okay.
And we did.
And in all fairness to everybody involved, more than one person is trying to keep track of the count, and people were coming in and going, and it made it very difficult.
But it's not the
And-
count, Mark, it's the fact that people were specifically told you may not enter.
Right,
the
I'm
yeah,
saying-
that's, yeah.
That's a very different issue, because some
that's-
people,
totally
some
separate.
people stepped outside in order to provide a seat for someone that was here.
On
So
a
not everybody,
specific
so,
subject,
so
yeah.
when we look out this door and we saw people standing there, I happen to know some of those folks who got up out of their seat to go stand there so that the room would be okay. But there was no,
Yeah, give me flip it over, please.
Now you realize how important Pauline is.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, we always knew that.
That was also a major distraction. She collapsed tonight, so.
Oh, yeah, no, I know.
So-
Can we move on, please?
Well, before we move on, and it's not going to fix what happened, and it's not going to make you feel better, but where the meeting's still open, if you were trying to speak, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't want you to leave here and saying you didn't have a chance to speak. Is there something you want to say?
No, I didn't come here to speak. I mean,
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm, as you know, I'm at almost every one of
Sure.
your meetings.
Right.
I show up, not only was I not allowed in, I was asked, why, what are you here for? You know, I mean,
Kevin.
when you come to a meeting, you don't come for just one agenda item and then be forced to leave.
No.
You know, I shouldn't have to say why I'm coming to the meeting.
Of course not.
And so Kevin will deal with that and have a report for us at the next meeting. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry.
Talking to counsel, he concurs there is no need for an executive session unless there's something the board wants to do.
No.
No, okay.
So with that said, I'd like to move that the board schedule an executive session at our next meeting to discuss strategy with respect to litigation and to authorize the chairman on behalf of the board to direct the town manager to be present at the meeting to discuss all of the information and circumstances that provided all of the documents related to this recent lawsuit by FXP LLC against the town. So we can have that discussion then. His town council should also be here.
In an executive session 2 weeks from tonight.
Correct.
What was that again?
Mark made a motion. Is there a second to his motion?
Can I just hear it again? I didn't
I'll read it
understand
again.
it.
Mark, is that assuming that
Somebody's
it's not
gonna have to help me,
settled?
because I don't even know what this means, but I'll be happy.
I move that the board schedule an executive session at our next meeting to discuss strategy with respect to litigation to authorize the chairman on behalf of the board to direct the town manager to be present at their meeting to discuss all the information and circumstances provide all the documents related to the recent lawsuit by FXP LLC against the town. So basically, I'm asking for a meeting about the lawsuit.
So if it's settled, we don't have to do it though, right?
I'll second.
There's a motion and
I
a
would say
second
not.
discussion.
Okay, so, you know what, I'll talk to you in the morning,
Okay,
just
all
to
right.
get clarification.
Okay.
Okay, gotcha.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll give that to you since there's no
Okay,
following.
and I'll talk
Do
to
we have
Kevin.
stuff to sign, Kevin?
Oh, yeah.
I don't see the folder.
I don't have it.
Sandra took
You don't
it.
have it, Larry?
I don't have it either.
No.
No.
Is it on the desk?
Well,
Usually it's on the desk.
we know where you live.
Right.
We'll
I
find you.
entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
The motion by Mark, there's a second by Linda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.